Oh,
Well, I'll be damned. Is that a Roddy?
yeah, hold on.
Huh. I am still holding, and we are live. Good evening, everybody. How's it going? Tonight we are we are live. We are going to be doing the Friday night fights. We actually, everybody. Just so you know, I got thrown off my game there. I'm just about to click the make it happen button, and lo and behold, Roddy walks in the room. So long time no see. He told me to hold on. I'm still holding. I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to be holding on to or how long I have to hold on to it, but you know what? I'll bet it's going to be worth the wait. So while I'm still waiting, let me go ahead and kick this off by telling everybody that tonight's topic is going to be Palantir. Palantir and privacy. At what cost security? So I'm sure that we've all been following this in the news recently. That our administration, our current presidential administration, is in talks with or has spoken with, or I'm not exactly sure where we're at, and hopefully we're going to suss that out throughout the course of this conversation. But the company Palantir, which is my understanding an AI driven data mining program that is already in somewhat limited use here in our government and in our different alphabet agencies, to compile a database of all known information about American citizens. Now, at first, when it was being talked about, it was talked about being used for purposes of immigration and naturalization. But the more that this has been going on, and the more that this has been talked about, the more it seems that's not the parameters within which this program is going to be working, and the Snowden worst case scenario is in fact coming to light. For those of you who don't know, the defense from our government regarding Snowden was, yeah, we might be taking all this information, but we're not doing anything with it. So basically, we are to a point where the government is about to change that. And I'm curious to see where everybody stands on this. I personally have always come from a background, a Jeffersonian background, where you should not sacrifice your liberty for your security. And most of the people I associate with seem to think that as well. But I'm curious to see if that's still going to hold, or if perhaps in the current climate and in the world today, if people are moving that line in the sand, or if the line in the sand has just been completely blurred. So that said, we've got a few people who might be showing up. We shall see. We definitely have at least two so far for us. That would be, of course, Roddy, who seems to be shown up, which is, for those of you who do not know or remember who Roddy is, because it's been such a long time, Roddy is a founding member of this stream when we were still called the Everyday Stoners. Roddy is, to the best of my description, a pretty far right conservative MAGA supporter and Trump supporter. And it looks to me like that's you, right? Spelt this. Your name is.
Hello.
That is okay. Cool. What's going on? And
Yes.
we also have I spelt this wrong. Another streamer who is jumping in here with us, but I'm going to let you describe yourself, and let me know, Roddy, whenever you got yourself all sorted out and you're able to speak as well. Tell us a little about yourself, Speltus.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, like, I would say, always with what I go with is like anarchism first, communism second, socialism third, and fuck capitalism. And I don't I it's not my favorite analogy to use because it could be at a base level. These nuanced political conversations can take a lot more than just that base level of comprehension. So I like to preface, or well, not preface that, but continue to say as well, like it's not just a straight line or a list where, oh, anarchism is the highest of priorities. It's a circle, a round robin style, where all the names in the lists are, or all the things are listed. It's circular, so they don't take importance over the other one. When they hold their importance to the political economic situation that we're trying to apply them to, the conversation that we're attempting to have, they circularly rotate into each other endlessly. Like, oh, this is an anarchist ideology that leaks into communism, that leaks into socialism. That, oh, now that we're talking about the economy, let's converse about capitalism, because it is a good thing to have an economy grow. It's a bad thing to run a world under that entire ideology and say, oh, capitalism equals democracy. And I think that about sums up my ideology. So if we got questions about it, please do let me know.
Well, okay, no. So let
take too
me.
long there.
No, that was perfect. So let me go ahead and field this first, because I should forewarn you that the other founding member of the Everyday Stoners was an anarcho-communist, and so Roddy and I have spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours sword fighting over this, and the fact is, I'm not going to let myself get triggered too hard into a Capcom sock debate tonight, because as I said, that's the way. Anytime I talk to communists or Marxists, it inevitably becomes that, just because they say something that's counter logical, and it's very difficult for me to ignore. Like the fact that you believe that capitalism and democracy are not inherently compatible, despite the fact that capitalism is literally voting with your dollars. So again, we will have that sword fight on another night,
We'll talk about that another day.
because again, Roddy is a staunch capitalist, and if we open those doors, we will not be able to stop the floodgates. Is that safe to say, Roddy? You're still an avid capitalist, sir, or has that changed? Is there a Roddy there yet? I guess the Roddy is not actually there yet, so that's okay. Perhaps he will show back up. If you could help me while we're here, if you... oh, yeah, yes, he is, and yes, he is. Okay, well, so hopefully he's going to actually be able to have a microphone working. Your mic was working for like a split second. I heard those lovely dulcet tones for like 2 seconds. Back to what I was about to say, though. If you still trying to get the mic working, yeah, word. All right, cool. Yeah, good luck with green screens, my dude. So mine is actually right up there. I don't know if you can see here. I can actually give you at least a little bit of a badoink.
I saw your background. I was all like, let me portray my. Everybody look at my books. I'm very intelligent.
There you go. Yeah, no, this isn't a bookcase, man. Those are paints. Those are miniature paints.
I was like, oh, I was jealous. I was like, oh, what do you do? Like mini figure painting, or I couldn't tell exactly. Nice. Yes, that's what I figured from the size of the. Yeah. Epic. Beautiful.
I got tons of shit that this is what I'm just currently working on. I'm working on a game called Hero Quest, which is basically a tabletop RPG board game like original D&D. So, but really, I started out painting. So TLDR, since we're still waiting for people to funnel in, and you know what, if this ends up just being a fucking circle jerk bullshitting all night, I don't even care. The conversations always develop. So originally I was invited by a nephew to play a game called Warhammer 40K. I don't know if you've heard of it. But yeah, I started playing it, and what I found was that 2 years later, I have only played the game once, but I have dropped almost $300 on pieces that I'll probably never actually play in a game because I just paint the little sons of bitches. And I found out that I really, really enjoy painting them. And I'm not half bad at it. Not to toot my own horn. I actually did for quite some time have my stream. That was literally all I did for the stream for like almost a year straight when I was still trying to find myself. I started out doing politics, and then I had to take a break from politics a couple of times. And whenever I do those breaks, I basically just do paranormal videos and paranormal, like, is it real or not videos, and then like reaction stuff. And then while I'm painting miniatures, which, to be honest with you, is kind of my zen. If I had my druthers, like, people used to say, well, what do you enjoy doing? What would you like to do on a stream? That's the answer. I do what I'm doing here because I feel like it needs to be done. That's I know it probably sounds pompous, but it's the truth. Like, I feel like conversations like this need to happen, and unfortunately most people are not capable of having these kinds of conversations. So so that said, again, the game is kind of secondary to just sitting there doing the little painting things. And yeah, that's what those are. So when I first started out, like, I'd bought all the wrong shit, and then like Christmas 2 years ago, my wife like went full ham and bought me like the every color they make from the company that I prefer. Yeah, speed paints, skadoosh. I don't know if that's focusing or not, but yeah. So there's, it's like a 320 fucking bottle set. I'm like, well, I mean, this has to be shown. So anyway, do you also do miniatures or painting or anything like that? Or?
I was gonna say I got a lot to say about. I'm sorry. You're making a game. You're making your own then, because I have a lot of things to say about that. Or what did you mean by?
So it's a game. It's called Hero Quest. You can actually look this up. No,
you said which one?
So I started out with Warhammer, but I never actually played the game. I've been playing a game called Hero Quest since I was in high school. It's like it's like a cheap and easy way to introduce plebes to D&D, right? Or to any tabletop RPG. The original Dungeons and Dragons was a tabletop, like an actual board game, right? Excuse me. So
I play D20 Modern.
Okay,
and I'm trying to make a video, not a tabletop RPG style game based off the D20 Modern system, D20 Modern, which is the rule set, a modern rule set in modern times, based off of the Dungeons and Dragons 3rd edition rules. And they actually just did a Everyday Heroes. If you've heard of Everyday Heroes, the 5th edition remake of the D20 Modern system for the 5th edition rule set. I was part of the playtest in their Discord to like talk about how they wanted people would see the rules going for how the book would come out. It was super fun. It was really awesome. And so I was like, I talk with the chat a lot about making a D20 game that talks about ethics, morality, and politics that kind of leads people into being like and headed towards kind of more leftist understanding of politics. So yeah, I love minis too, and just art and painting in general. So
for sure,
I think it's really therapeutic the way you said, and I think it's super helpful for like everybody to be doing stuff like that. Like samurais would train in everything. They trained in art and calligraphy and all geography, all of it. It was that diversity that they believed would lead to a understanding of then a deeper understanding of all of it together. And I think that's really important to like push art with the math, with the science, with the literature, with all those sorts of things.
For sure.
So
well, yeah. So and the other thing is that anybody who ever says that they're bored, I think the only people that are bored are boring people. Like I personally literally have way too many hobbies to ever get around to. I do my best to keep up with them. But for instance, that I wish I could spend all fucking day just sitting here painting the minis. But then on top of that, I wish that I could actually find people to play the fucking game with me. Whoop, I heard a microphone. And also,
am I in?
You are in indeed. Hey, what? give me one more talk. Let me adjust. No, you keep talking.
Testing.
Introduce yourself, Roddy. Tell us about yourself.
I'm Naughty Roddy. I'm the resident right-wing wacko, apparently. So that's me.
That resident right-wing wacko. That's actually kind of got a ring to it, doesn't it? Like you should probably you should get that tattooed like Thug Life, like right-wing wacko. That'd be
I'm gonna give myself higher chances of cancer by tattooing ink into me. That's a great idea.
Is that a thing? I've never heard that.
Actually, that's what apparently is now being discussed. They're now that we've got 50 plus years of large amounts of people tattooing massive amounts of their body like never before, they're like, oh, turns out there's a 50+% of developing cancer when you do that.
They're seeing some
But
sort
who
of a
can trust the
correlate.
study?
Yeah,
Well,
no,
I
of
mean,
course.
anyway, let's see if we can get this.
I use ink made from charcoal. Healthier than an apple.
There you go. Yeah, it cleans me. Yeah, no, well, and I mean, I think it's not to be
Anyway,
overlooked.
so-
It's not to be overlooked that the technologies have progressed significantly. Hey, that's a fucking Roddy. That the technologies have progressed significantly over the years to a point that the is 1.65. Okay, so it's not a huge correlation, but there is some apparent overlap. Yeah, like, so for instance, red ink, my very first, I've got a Captain America shield on my calf, and the first I got like 20 plus years ago. The red ink that was used, my body was like, yeah, nah, fuck you. And even to this day, it like raises up, it gets really irritated really easily, it itches like fuck. I mean, 20 plus years later, it still itches like fuck. And I was told that it's pretty common, specifically with red ink response. And so that said, I've since gotten other ink, and the stuff that they're using now doesn't bother me in the slightest, doesn't have any negative reaction, looks nice, et cetera, et cetera. So I wouldn't be surprised, like, to find out that there's some shit in the shit that we don't want in our shit, but you know, whatever. So. All right.
It's not,
Well, I
everybody's
mean,
body
look-
reacts different to,
Well, yeah,
to
exactly.
chemicals, right? So you don't know for sure, like, what could be a very common thing for, like, this red ink to be not an issue for everybody else. Like, you specifically reacted to it.
Careful there, Spelt This, because you're starting to sound a lot like an anti-vaxxer.
Absolutely not.
I mean, but you don't know how people's bodies react to different chemicals, right? Isn't that what you just said?
And that's true, and that's why I do understand and wish to get on the anti-vaxxer side, because I'm like, don't be anti-vax. Say, oh, let's get the research done.
I'm
Do
vax
more
skeptical,
research needs
is
to
what
be
you're
done.
telling me.
And not even that. No, the vaccines are good, and just with this amount of large scale rollout of them, you're going to run into issues like that. And so being aware of it and talking about it is super important, because then people who have these issues or think that they might have a reaction because of something else that's happened in their life will be more aware and able to be like, oh, well, it's not that I don't want the vaccine. Let me check with my doctor about the things going on and get the knowledge, versus immediately rejecting the idea of it altogether, which I do not think is good.
Fair.
That's right. Get that. It'll come back on.
Oh, we lost you. We lost you there, Spelt This.
It turns off every 30 minutes. It's a DSLR, not a webcam.
Isn't that
So do
a
you
sexual
guys
position?
gamble?
I'm sorry. Do we gamble? I do not
What?
gamble. No.
I
Welcome
do.
in, Game Boy. Excuse me. Welcome in, Roddy 2.0. I don't know if you saw. I don't know if you saw, Roddy, that Game Boy changed his name in honor of you.
I did.
Yeah. So Roddy is trad. He says.
Roddy is trad.
So.
Well,
It was it meant to be
trad
a
being
compliment.
Traditional, I believe. That's what I've always heard it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
It meant
Good
to be a
looking out, bro.
compliment.
Say what,
Yep.
Game Boy?
It was meant to be a compliment, but
Yeah, no, again, like, that's what I knew what you meant when you said it. I cracked up laughing just because, and then Toddy is rad was a pretty fucking funny response from Vegan. So yeah. Anyways, see,
Toddy
there we
is
go.
rad.
We got two right leaning people in the panel tonight. That is fucking dope, because I'm really hoping that I can get somebody from the right to make this make sense to me. We've got enough people here that I'd like to circle back a little bit and at least get opening statements from those of you who are here right now. Again, like I said, my understanding is there's a good chance people are going to kind of trickle in throughout the show. But I'd like to hear both of y'all, and since Roddy was here first, I'm going to hear his take first. We're going to kind of round robin. I already kind of told y'all my position, but I will do it as well. And we'll probably close on me. But Roddy, how do you feel about the fact that the administration that you put into office and that you have seemingly continued to support pretty fucking full ham is currently compiling a database on your private information using AI? Because from my memory of our conversations, the words I just said sound like a fucking Roddy fever dream nightmare. Correct me if I'm wrong, good sir.
Well, I guess it comes down to what information are they collecting that's any different than any voluntarily agreed upon downloaded app or just the cell phones that we've all decided to start using?
I'm going to interrupt you real quick just to answer that question for you so that you can give me a fulsome answer. My understanding is, and I circle back to what I said on the intro, you of course remember when Snowden came forward and said, hey, look, they're listening to everything we say. And the government said, yeah, but we're not doing anything with that information. It's all just sitting in a list somewhere. It's just sitting in a database. It's just sitting in a file folder, right? So right now, we already use Palentir. And again, anybody out there in chat or anybody in the conversation, please correct me if anything I say is incorrect and fact check me nonstop throughout this. My understanding is that Palentir is already currently in use in different organizations. So the CIA uses it, the FBI uses it, the NSA uses it. All of these alphabet soup organizations that you have multiple times in the past spoken ill of, they all use it already. And what Palantir does is it's more of a data mining, right? So it's able to find connections, correlations, et cetera, et cetera. So the answer to your question is it's not so much that they're taking new information, it's how they're going to be using that information. All of these different companies are now going to be unified, companies, because, they're fucking businesses, are going to be unified into a single comprehensive database on everything that there is about Roddy. So in other words, it's not going to they don't have to go to your phone company to see what you've said yes to there, and then contact Google to see what you've said yes to there, and contact Apple to see what you said yes to there, and contact Steam to say what you said yes to there. All of this information is going to be automatically collated into an artificial intelligence operated database so that when they put in Roddy's name, literally every fucking bit of your information that is in any way accessible, either through your permissions or, as Snowden has demonstrated, not through your permissions, will all be on a single file about you. So literally it is the worst case scenario of our privacy being destroyed by the big government. So I ask again, how do you feel about Trump coming forward and saying that he thinks this is a swell and necessary move?
Well, I can dislike it. When you're going to look in my file, you're going to see perfect driving record, no criminal history. It's going to be boring as shit. So you
yourself have fought against that argument. Right. I'm not doing anything wrong, so it's fine to look.
No, I'm not any less against it.
Okay.
But as we're seeing, and again, I've been kind of out of it because I had a relapse and some other issues, as well as busy with other projects. But as far as that goes, we can't even get the politicians to vote on single item bills. We can't get them to vote in term limits. So the rails are already off. It's not a defense of Trump. I'm not a fan of him doing it. But we're already seeing where trying to get something passed, it's the same thing as when they passed the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and everything. In the spirit of cooperation, they're going to say, well, we have to give these 4 states, colonies, politicians this in order to get that. And I absolutely hate it. But at the same time, I voted for the guy. There are things that I like, and if I could have my 100% perfect politician, great. But I don't get that.
What percentage would you say he is? Just out of curiosity before we move past.
Again, I haven't been keeping up with things, but I haven't heard anything that I find that I'm super upset about.
Including this invasion of your privacy?
Well, yeah, again, I may not be happy about it, but I have a cell phone. I have my internet service. I have all that stuff. As I'm finding out with the things that are going on in my personal life, I got 5 different groups digging through my information now. So,
and you're not okay with that. So hold on, because I do need to hear this from you, Roddy. In the past, these were the things that you have said things, borderline revolutionary things about what you would do when you thought that it was the blue team who was spying on you the way that these guys are going to. And now all of a sudden it's just a shrug.
Borderline revolutionary
yes, that we should stand against the government.
We should stand against those things.
But you're not
at the
standing
same time.
against them.
I have never been. Well, I'm busy doing other things because the things that I'm taking care of right now are ultimately more pressing than politics and politicians. So again, the people that are digging into my information, that's partially because I have groups requesting to do it on my behalf, and I have other people that are doing it on other fronts. So
you're willing to accept it as the answer. You're willing to accept any sacrifice? There is no line, no limit?
Well, I don't have a choice.
Yes, we do. You know as well as I do, you do.
I currently am involved in other things, so
you're willing to accept. I ask again, is there a line of privacy infringement that would motivate you to no longer be concerned about your other things and to re-engage with your liberties?
Until I'm done with the projects and things I currently have going on, I don't have a choice. These are more pressing because of my situations.
All right.
So unless somebody comes knocking at my door or does something stupid, I'm fully engaged elsewhere.
Sounds good. All right. Good answer. So basically at this point, just to summarize, there is no line too far because it's not splashing on your boots just yet. Is that a fair way to summarize?
If you want to put it that way, sure. I'm more focused on my immediate situation.
Sure.
And until I get this stuff squared away, ironed out.
I feel like you know as well as I do, Roddy, that what's going on in our government and what's going on in our government is directly involved in every situation of our daily lives. And if we overlook that involvement, that's how they continue to slip things away from us. And you know as well as I do, liberties are far easier to lose than they are to regain.
Sure. So let me ask you a question.
Yep, but I do want to roll on to Game Boy. So, but like I don't want to see it. No, but go ahead. Go ahead, because I will get to my position.
It's a quick question.
Yep.
Let's say you've got a parent in the hospital with terminal illness and they've got 6 months to live.
Okay.
Are you going to be out here chanting, rioting against the government, or are you going to be focusing on that? It's just a simple question because that's not my situation, but it's similar. So
what I can tell you is that I would do my best to do both, but I wouldn't completely stop paying attention to the world around me for 2 reasons. Number one, because, and again, this isn't trying to sound sanctimonious or anything, but that in those sorts of negative situations, distractions are actually healthy. But second of all, just because my world is falling apart doesn't mean that the whole world has to fall apart at the same time. And I firmly believe that those times when we're distracted are the times that everything falls off the rails. But I do understand your point, and I will acknowledge that yes, that is a very valid point, and yes, I understand that there are things that would prioritize my immediate attention. But I also feel like, especially like I said, given the state of the world right now and how fast everything is falling to pieces around us, or at the very least, even if you think that everything is falling apart in a good way, it's still falling apart. And part of the thing that we're going to get to tonight is the fact that this, I believe, was all planned, and this is all part of this is part of the playbook. But we'll come back to that.
Okay.
So okay. Game Boy. Excuse me, Rotty is trad. Can you? And it's funny. Can you just put it back to Game Boy at least for the stream so I can? I keep every time I look at it, it bugs me because that's not you. You're Game Boy. God damn it.
Okay.
Game Boy. Where do you stand on privacy versus liberty? Do you believe that our security is more important than our privacy?
Well, so first off, I might leave the call once we get to current
Of
news,
course,
'cause I didn't pay-
you've got more ADD than all of us combined. You flute in and out like the pretty girl at a party. I get it. Go on. Tell me what you think.
But I think like whenever it comes to my perception of privacy versus like your own liberty, I don't think it's an either or, and I think privacy comes from like privacy is not at the expense of security, but an aspect of it. What are you trying to secure? Well, if you're not trying to secure your own protection, then what are you doing? And I think privacy is part of your own protection. I don't think it should be seen as, well, should we give up our privacy to the government so that they can protect us? But rather, if you are doing something that is at the expense of someone else, it really depends on what you're doing and how we can prevent that. And I haven't seen reasonable evidence to say that there isn't something that you need to give up your personal information to prevent. And if you're giving up your personal information, it usually comes out of some guise of corruption, or that the government just wants to keep a tab on you because they view you as something that they own rather than you owning yourself. I don't think that we should blame anyone who voted for their privacies to be taken away, because at the end of the day, they're voting for individuals out of what for, and that these individuals, to get into office in the first place, must make some concessions to a broader political force. So I don't think Trump or Kamala or anyone was going to make a different decision, because Trump didn't just come up with the idea of giving up your privacy. I mean, we look at Snowden, we look at just gradual history of America, that it's something new, that this wasn't going to happen. So at the end of the day, I wouldn't go into like the partisan politics of it all, but rather just say that the government itself is going to want to keep tabs on you because they do think you're a citizen in part inside the government, rather a citizen that the government's trying to protect. But that's just my perspective.
Okay, so first of all, can you pick apart what you meant about privacy as a part of your security?
Well, I think privacy comes from the fact that you have your own life separate of other people, and that you can control how much of that you want to show to others. I can choose whether or not I want to put my face on the internet and say, okay, I'm starting to stream, and you decided I want to even go that far in telling people about myself, but I'm not going to tell them my name or where I live and stuff like that. We can each control what we can do. And I don't think it should be any different from me controlling what I tell other people from what I tell the government, unless I'm like a convicted felon who's already shown myself to be dangerous. I think there's very few times where you shouldn't control what you do with yourself or what you allow other people to see or not see. So
Okay.
that control over yourself is also the security to have, like, we expect security from danger, and I think the very getting rid of privacy is some sort of danger.
Okay. Okay. So you believe that, okay. No, well, fair enough. So I feel like you're kind of tap dancing on both sides of the line here, cuz I want to, maybe I'm wrong. I want to try to summarize what I understand just to make sure I see where you're at. So you believe that you should have privacy at your discretion. You believe that the government should have access to any information that you freely give, but you do not agree that they should be able to interfere or that they should not be able to go beyond that which you have willingly allowed them to know about yourself. You also... just to summarize the other part of that, you also believe that the invasion of your privacy is in and of itself a form of an attack. And so it is illogical to think that giving up your privacy would add to your security. Is that, did I summarize right?
Yeah, I would say that most forms of, like, I would say it's fair to grant the government the ability to look at public servers or even anything where you put yourself out. The government has the right to look at your Facebook, for example. But I would not
And to
say that
make
they have.
a condensed database of it, like to correlate to bring it all together into a single file. That as long as they're only doing that with your publicly available information.
Well, if, say, I have a criminal record, I think it's totally fair for the government to say, well, he publicly said this and he publicly said that. I think there is another argument to say that if there's a database where people actively make logs on your public information whenever they got the chance, that's another story. But I think it's fair for the government to ask, can I see public logs of something? Now, I think there is another argument to be made that if the government forces you to participate in systems like license plates or something like that, and even if I'm for license plates, I think there's an argument to be made about certain forceful government documentation, whether you should sign that or participate in that. But I think, in essence, there's a greater argument to be made on less action for the government to um, maintain security by making documentations of you as an individual. And I think documentations as a whole are a dangerous path you go down.
Okay. Now, the second question that I had for you is you were saying that corruption is a guise. I'm not exactly sure what you meant there. That it sounded like you were implying that corruption is a distraction or corruption. Like I didn't understand the way that what you meant when you said corruption is a guise used by the entire government.
Well, I think the entire, like, individuals by nature are self-interested when it comes to most actions they do. I think there's very few actions, or more broadly, I think there's very few individuals who aren't acting on self-interest. And when you ever have a position where you are asked to serve other people, you are doing that selfishly half the time, like a job. You expect compensation for your job. You're not just doing customer service at McDonald's for the love of the sport. So I think the same thing
Unless you're a
applies
communist.
for. Yeah.
Okay, no, fair enough. So the only other thing I want to say real quick, and this one isn't necessarily a question to what you were saying, it's just more of a response. I do want to be clear to everybody that the reason that I was pressing Roddy specifically on his opinion of Trump in relation to this decision, as opposed to just focusing on the decision itself, is because I have not had the opportunity to have a discussion with Roddy or any sort of a meaningful confrontation of that sort in quite some time. So I constantly am trying to vibe check Roddy. There's a bit of and I'm not airing out any tea, but hypocrisy is a thing that is very big deal to me. And so when I have spent hundreds of hours listening to a person tell me one thing, and then when things are changing because of a decision that they made, they won't acknowledge that they maybe made a wrong choice, that bothers me. And so that's kind of, again, I'm like I said, I love you, Roddy. That's the only reason that I do it. But that's the only reason that I was pressing on the Trump thing or correlating Roddy's position on Trump to Roddy's position on the privacy infractions and infringement that's happening right now. So, but I agree with you. This is a nonpartisan issue, and that the fact of the matter is, had it been Team Blue, I would not be shocked to hear this exact same news story coming from President Kamala. So again, I do not think that the only concern is, and again, like I said, I'll get to this whenever it's on mine. This is in the playbook, and this was foretold. So, but anyway, appreciate you there, Game Boy. Glad you're here. And if you do have to dip out, just go ahead, and anytime I see you down there in the chat or in the next room down, I will go ahead and suck you on up. So that said. Next, so I want to say hi to Koina. I'm gonna actually go to Koina before I get to us. He just because it works in the spell in the round and all that jazz. Cool. All right, so Koina, welcome in, my friend. How are you doing tonight? Tell us about your position. Where do you believe the line is? What level of sacrifice of privacy are you comfortable with in exchange for what level of security?
I'm not exactly sure. I think there's just a line. It's just undefined for me right now. I think that there's obviously some kind of like laws we have in place right now. Like you can go watch like a First Amendment auditor on YouTube. They can, find someone in public and videotape them, and they could have an issue with it. But that person has no expectation of privacy in public, so he could video record. But obviously, they can't use that for commercial purposes. So I think if a company's building like a database of faces to like make a profit off of, not okay. Government possibly making like a database off of names in a database, questionably okay, I think.
Repeat that one again.
Like if a government's making a database of names, but they're sourcing that just off of other government like databases, like
so just basically bringing it all together under one umbrella is okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's questionably more okay. I don't know if I'm 100% for it, but yeah.
Okay, so you actually brought up a really interesting thought there that I hadn't, or an angle I hadn't considered on this, which was the public recording. And I'm not sure about all of the laws on this. And for those of you who don't know, Koina is a little bit closer to, is more well versed in legalese than I. Public recording, just to make sure I know where this currently stands in the U.S., because you also mentioned those like auditors, right? Like the police auditors and all that shit. And I actually low key that is one of my secret addictions. Sometimes they blur people's face out, sometimes they don't. They're allowed to record them, but they must ask their permission to have their face visible if they're going to profit off of it. If the person says no, they can still use the content, but they have to blur their face. Or... because another thing that I watch is a lot of these Karen videos, and I am confident that those Karens did not say, yeah, I want you to show me publicly to the world being an absolute cunt. But the YouTuber who I'm watching is obviously making some level of profit from that lady's image in that environment or circumstance. Do you know off the top of your head, Koina, where the line is drawn on that?
I'm not.
You would have to look it up.
It's
okay.
Probably press, like they're saying they're media, like recording in public rather than like a company filming like TV.
Okay. I didn't know if, and this was just what I assumed or my guess, was the difference between taking their image and making it do something they didn't do versus demonstrating them doing a thing that they did do.
Just using their likeness.
Yeah, okay. It's using your likeness in general. Because this also circles back to, I'm literally right now Roddy's face and can't spell this. I mean, I'm only making like $1.25 off this whole fucking stream, but nevertheless, I'm making $1.25 off of their fucking faces right now. Like I guess that would be an implied consent because they know that I'm here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, okay, fantastic. Well, so that perfect timing then. Thanks for your position. Let's go ahead and move right on to Spelt This, since you said you had a thought.
Well, I actually had a comment about this specifically because I do photography. I do this sort of photography and cinematography was actually my major, and cinematography was my minor, and photojournalism was my major in college. I didn't graduate, but it was my attempt to what I was attempting to do. And so, yeah, right. And so the other individual here, Kay, there, you can correct me if I'm wrong here on my understanding. My understanding is you would have to prove some sort of defamation or some kind of like the effect of this negatively impacted. So that post of a video of a Karen, if they lost their job, if they were receiving hate mail, if issues were being caused in their real life that were causing them money or mental distrain, that is what would possibly give them a case towards some sort of defamation case of some kind. but as they mentioned as well, like you do, as long as you're not using things for commercial purposes, right? If that video is unmonetized, uploaded to YouTube, you too do to an extent have the legal right in the Western world to post and portray things like that. And I wanted to make a comment on that, saying like this is the sort of stuff we should be actually using AI for. Like we can have these kinds of videos out in the world to be like, well, let's analyze this kind of social behavior, but let's hide this person's identity. Like it's not targeting them. It's questioning the idea of this sort of behavior. Like they could have been having a bad day. Anything could have been happening. So let's be using the AI systems that we have to be blurring out people's faces in public on our cameras. They should just auto have that sort of feature. And when we're uploading to YouTube, just a quick, easy ability to be like, oh, voice change all the voices in this with some sort of auto AI feature. And I'll leave that one there at that.
Well, I just put a great big heart next to the idea that AI should be policing our privacy in our favor. And that makes me wonder if there isn't a way that we could perhaps create a counter AI to scrub our information. Like I like that a lot. But you didn't actually give me your position in the sand. Where do you feel the line actually is? I know that as an anarcho-communist, I assume that, and the way that that's been explained to me before, is that you are the most extreme version of a libertarian, which is to say that you believe that the state should be dissolved completely and that we should exist in a stateless system. I also feel like you kind of implied last time we spoke that you're not actually that extreme on it, and that that's more of a trigger thing to kind of get the partisans riled up at you. So where is your actual line in the sand? How much do you think the state should be protecting us? And how much of your privacy and liberties are you willing to sacrifice in exchange for that protection?
Okay, I mean, arguably at a base level, I would hope to say none, no sacrifice of any liberties, but to an extent, you do have to do that to enter what is the social contract, quote unquote, for back of a letter term, for what is society. And so for me to recognize that as like being part of the society, you can't go too extreme with it, where it's like when I came in, people say, oh, communism can't even exist, right? That's a fake word that fake people on the internet use. So I'm like, well, of course I'll use it then, just to be like, well, let me see what your opinions are of where we go with this, because like my opinion's very deep in the context of like, well, it's not just anarchism first, it's a circle. I do, and even as much as I struggle with it, like talking to leftists about capitalism, it is incorporated into the economy. And so that sort of situation is goes to that round robin idea that we've been talking about. It's like a circular, which is what I'm drawing right now. I have a the spirograph. I love circles. It's just that's what the universe is. Like it's a circular pattern, maybe not pattern, but things kind of circle back around. And so you can't just say, oh, anarchism's gonna be the definitive political economic answer to this situation. It's like, no, if we have a very nuanced social, systemic, political, societal issue surrounding this thing that we're trying to talk about now, like the database of information being collected, we have to come at that at a conversation. I'll get my camera back on. Sorry. We have to come at that at a conversation of understanding all of these political ideologies: anarchism, capitalism, communism, democracy, federal republics, all that sort of stuff, to be like, okay, well, how do we, from this understand, because if we go at it at just anarchism or just communism or just democracy or just capitalism, that it won't be able to determine what it is that needs to happen. So I can say things that can be like, oh, well, like, let's just, oh, anarchy, chaos, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's probably what you think and have heard. But like, let's get into it deeper, where it's like, okay, I understand the need for security and safety. And I, as I mentioned, would like to see the usage of AI in our benefit, in our benefits. It's already been trained on all of our data. And so if that is the case that's taking place, that it is being used, we're currently in a state where we can't really go back from that. We can't go back from that. We can't really just flip things off, turn that off, and head to a stateless society that isn't using this AI anymore without it turning to something I think would be ridiculous. And so we need to work with that exists right now, that data being used, those things that exist, these AI systems, and go, okay, how does this work in a system that's a round robin that goes, okay, what are the communists saying? What are the anarchists saying? What are the Democrats saying? What are the Republicans saying? What are they saying about this? And how do we determine how to handle it appropriate in a way that, you can't make everybody happy, but you should strive to do so. You should attempt to be like, okay, we are a society working together, so we all have to agree to at least disagree so that we can come back to it at the next election, at the next political conversation. So everybody feels heard, feels that their opinion is going to be possibly the next thing that gets swayed once they get their thoughts together and come back to the next conversation. Any thoughts on that? I don't. I could say
Isn't
more,
that
but
just
I'll
isn't
go
that
ahead.
just kicking the can down the road? Have we historically have we had any like successes at saying, well, the next administration is going to sort it out, and they do?
I would say yes. I'm rather young, and so you might be able to make some more comments on this. But if you watch Adam Conover, Adam Ruins Everything. His YouTube is now Adam Conover. One of his videos from since the beginning of January, the beginning of this year. So one of his more recent ones in the past like 6 months or whatever. Was about the Democrats, why the Democrats keep losing. And it talked about how people used to go and get, I don't want to say get drunk, but they would go to the bars, they would go to these political places and kind of, sort of to an extent, yell at each other about these conversations. And that would allow a bit of that energy to get out where it was like, oh, they'd know that perhaps the next conversation, they could sway the vote, they could change the system, they could get involved because they felt that way because they were out in the streets talking about it with their fellow civilians every day, which is what I wanted to mention too. That I talked about that last time on the panel I was here with Corb. We the people, it's we the people. There's never really a distinction between the government and the people until right now. Trump's taken it over. Essentially, the American government's always been that sort of situation. I talk a lot about, I won't get too deep into it now, save it for another time, but a lot about like Native American, specifically Native North American political systems, but Native political systems throughout the entirety of the world. And that's where I really like to get my basis for anarchism and communism and stuff, and be like, it's not. They did not have a primitive version. They had the version that very clearly led to these future generations and this modern time to allow us to even have these vocabulary words to have the discussion about what it is that we're trying to talk about.
Okay.
End of statement.
All right. So, first of all, one thing I do want to address on that was the Adam Conover thing. So, Adam, I used to be a fan of Adam Conover. I thought back when it was the Adam Ruins Everything, I thought he was a pretty swell dude. And the fact is, I'm actually myself at heart. So whenever he would do his version of the actually, I got a kick out of it. I enjoyed his content all the way. I think it was when he was on Rogan that I was like, oh, this dude doesn't actually know anything. And in fact, he's just kind of obtuse. He did. And he was made a fool of. And again, like I said, I went into it excited because I like this dude and I like this guy's content. I like his approach to things and I like his perspectives. And then I saw him and I was like, oh, okay, never mind. So I haven't followed anything he's done since. I think I saw him on something the other day. I want to say it was like he was on Tim Pool, maybe. And I was like, oh, that's weird, but okay, cool, good for you. I could be wrong. It might not have been Tim Pool, but it was something like Tim Pool. Like it wasn't Alex Jones, but it was that direction. So anyway, the point is that that I lost a lot of interest in Adam Conover because he's not what I thought he was. But that said, I don't know anything that he's done in quite some time.
How do you feel then about, like, did you see a bit of a different sphere? Like, I mean, compared to, because here you are with me, somebody part of the, a younger generation versus, the political conversations you had growing up compared to what we're doing, like, right now in this panel space that you've created. Well, did you feel a bigger...
Okay, well, so first of all, I should clarify that I'm Gen X. Right. So, and Gen X, we were rebellious in a way that we had our own we were the echo of the 60s generation, right? In a lot of ways. Like we were the alternative culture. We were the grunge kids. We were the Breakfast Club. You know what I mean? So that said, in my experience, people my generation had a certain disdain for organized government or for big government. It's always been a thing. But we didn't really talk about it so much. We let Rage Against the Machine do it for us. You know what I mean? Like we weren't really talking about this because we didn't have a space like this. Now I was involved in debate, and so when I was a kid, I watched a show called Family Ties, and Alex P. Keaton, aka Michael J. Fox, was the coolest, and so I wanted to know what he was talking about. So I did research and I looked into it and I learned, and that was how I got kind of sucked into politics. Because who's this Ronald Reagan guy? Right. And plus, I was particularly aware at the time of World War III or the nuclear menace, because I grew up in the military. My father was active duty in most of his professional career, lifer. I literally grew up on nuclear bases, right? I grew up sitting at the end of a flight line watching B-52s play touch and go at 2:00 in the morning while Dad was working on a TACAN. You know what I mean? So again, I was very aware of political geopolitics in that way. When I went to school, we had duck and cover drills. So that said, I have always been aware of it, but we didn't really talk about it. There was no public space to do this, except around a beer or two or at the water cooler or whatever. I was going to say, when you were talking about that, it's always been us versus them. Okay, I just want to set that straight, or at least as far back as I know. It has always been the people, and then there's the government. It hasn't been since probably the 1800s that the people actually felt represented by the government, to the best of my
That's why I talk about native political systems.
Sure.
They represent that more.
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So
Sorry.
no, it's okay. So what I was going to say was just a couple of things real quick that I'm going to glaze past, because you said things that seem counter to other things that you've said in the past, right? So, for instance, thinking that big government is bad, therefore you want anarchism, but you're willing, and we've discussed this in the past, you're willing to accept that communism inherently has to be an extreme authoritarian system where there is only acceptance of the party and all resistance is oppressed. That is inherent to the implementation of a one-party system, even if that party is the Communist Party, and you believe that that is a means to an end of somehow that party is going to relinquish control to the individuals, even though they literally just stamped out all individuality. You see the contradiction there, that you can't be willing to accept big business or big government, and also say that big government is bad. You can't get to, especially when you know that the power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? So real quick before you go, before you go, circling back to that growing up in the fear of the KGB era, and associating a lot of that with what was called communism, I would ask you, what level of deep state do you believe you're willing to accept to accomplish that goal? To implement the type of government that you think the United States should have. And I ask this because I'm immediately going to kick this ball back to Roddy, given the fact, and I know I told Game Boy I wasn't going to do this too much, given the fact that in Roddy's opinion, and not to put words in his mouth either, in Roddy's opinion, that's literally what's happening right now. Is he's willing to accept these things for the implementation of the type of government he believes should be in place. Am I correctly summarizing for you there, Roddy? Just a nod or yes?
Well, I don't like deep states. I've always agreed with you about Glasnost. I want a small government. So having, 200,000 arguably soldiers in 15 different government organizations, including the weather department and stuff, I'm not a fan of. The government's weather department should have like 6 people in it, and they should all be, people who study the weather, not 50 people, 45 of which are military trained and have a weapons locker, SWAT vehicles and stuff like that.
You're saying that's bad, to be clear.
Yeah, I don't want that. Like I'm not a big fan of the militarization of different government departments. It to me, all it is a way of wasting money and giving the ability to shuffle paper, justify budgets, and those types of things. So I'm not a fan of a deep state, whether it's left or right.
But yet you do acknowledge that everything about, because you are from the same generation as me, everything about the implementation or usage of Palantir for what we're talking about here, for that compilation of a database, for that blatant invasion of our privacy by the government, you agree that is part of or perpetuating that deep state, correct?
Well, the question is what information are they getting that's not already publicly available? So as an example, when you look at some of the government systems, whether it be the FAA and the flight, the people working in the air traffic control towers, if you're talking about the federal retirement system, which I guess was all hand done, they're down in the bottom of a copper mine. Like those systems, if they're that archaic, yeah, I can see the government wanting to streamline and make it where they can pull information on somebody that they need and get any information that's available, whether it be from the DMV, the county tax assessor, the whether you have marriage certificates or public school records, things like that. If you're talking about the wiretapping and the things that already shouldn't be going on, which was
but have been found out are, and yes, that is what I'm talking about.
Right, and so that's going back to what, the Patriot Act. I was against the Patriot Act when it passed, and wasn't that Bush?
Yep.
So again, 9/11, the precursor to justify the Patriot Act and that garbage. Yeah, not a fan. Even if it's under the guise of, we got to stop these terrorists. Well, how about we stop funding the terrorist back when they're supposed to be, quote unquote, our CIA operatives and guys, to then later come out and claim that, they went rogue. Imagine that. And it's like, yeah, imagine that. Quit spending our money on your private little Risk game that you're playing with the world. How about we stop doing that?
So you believe, just to be clear, that there is a government within our government, and that's the part you disagree with. Is that correct?
Okay, say that again. I'm sorry.
You believe that there is a government within the government. Is that whenever you talk or whenever the words deep state come out of your face, you're thinking a like sub-government or like a small cabal of cigar smoking dudes in shadowy rooms? Or
not necessarily a dark cabal. You could have, let's say, the head of the EPA or let's say the third in command goes and plays golf with the second in command of the EPA, and these guys have decided, we hate Trump, we're gonna hide information and not do our jobs the way we swore to do them. Like, that's a deep state. That is a group of people that are working in concert to hinder the elected officials that we put in there. So that's
Do
the
you
stuff
believe that
I'm
they are always
against.
going to hinder, or do you believe that they have their own agenda? Like, are they there as a stopper, as a catch-all, or do you believe that they have some sort of mutually agreed upon goals? I
think it's multiple things because I think there's more than one. The problem is, okay, let's say, as an example, if you have a school board, right, and we elect these people to be on the school board, and the head of the school board goes in and says, hey, I really think we should start pushing in this direction. We should start supporting homeschoolers and parents that want information. So let's implement these things. And then 2 or 3 of the members plus some of the lower level people are like, yeah, we're not going to do that. Screw this guy. And they go around, even though when they took the job, they agreed to implement whatever policies and
Mutiny.
requests or orders that the person who's in the presidential position of the school board makes. Well, now you've got people sabotaging the system that this person was elected to do. So then when the parents come in and go, wait a second, why am I not getting this information? I voted for you because you said you were going to make sure that I, as a homeschooling parent, would have access to this stuff. And he goes, I signed the paperwork. It was supposed to be available on the school board website. It's not available. It's the same thing. It's a question of, oh, can those people justify, well, we were just protecting the school union, the teachers that are in the union. We were protecting their jobs because if it comes out that the homeschooling is more productive and these people actually are passing the tests and the kids in classes aren't, they're going to look bad and they might actually get rid of the public school system. Like, it's no different.
To be clear, Roddy, I just want to make sure I've got to vibe check this because I do actually have one other quick thing that I need you to verify. Welcome back, spelled, and then I actually have a quick question for Quinn as well. But to make sure you're not, having different standards, this same logic would apply if a teacher was to, I don't know, say, have prayers in class despite there being rules against it. You would be equally against, or something of that nature, like somebody who was
okay.
so. Well, yeah, I just one other good example, because I'm pretty sure that you're pretty avidly pro-life, right? So you would be equally against somebody spouting pro-life rhetoric in a classroom setting as you would somebody spouting pro-choice rhetoric. Is that correct?
If you want to talk about prayer in class, we could talk about that. But
I'm not. Well, I want to make sure that the standard, because if there's a rule, you basically what you said was that you believe that anybody who is trying to inhibit the carrying out or execution of existing laws and regulations should be removed, because it's not their choice to be able to arbitrarily stand up against the rules and regulations as they stand. And so if there is a rule against prayer in class, well, I'm just saying, like,
okay, if there's a rule against prayer in class,
and a teacher chooses to still do it,
says everybody bow your heads, that's not okay.
Good. I just wanted to make sure.
If the teacher is praying at his desk and his students walk in, that's different.
Yeah,
so,
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
I mean, again, because the fact of the matter is the students are going to probably, I would be very interested to see how that would all play out, actually. And the fact of the matter is I'm about tolerance and acceptance. I'm about bringing other people in. And so, again, I actually think that that's perfectly fine. And if they ask questions, I think the teacher can answer those questions. Now, with that said, when the students walk into the room and that same, let's circle it back. What were we specifically talking about here? Well, we were talking about people standing against governmental action. But let's say it was something equally same thing. Let's say those students walked in and that teacher is actually a Wiccan and is mumbling pagan mantras as the students are walking in. You're okay with them doing that?
If you're praying silently, that's
okay.
different.
So the Christian has to pray silently as well.
Well,
I didn't catch that part. I thought they were allowed to sit there praying quietly at their day. I didn't remember which word.
well,
you
my
used.
assumption is they're praying quietly. You don't
Okay, so
generally.
the Satanist is, or the Wiccan is also allowed to pray quietly at their desk.
If that's what they're doing,
And if the students ask questions, is this person allowed to respond? That was the standard we set about God, Christianity.
If the teacher wants to open that can of worms, they can do that.
Okay, cool.
I would advise against it.
Again, well,
Because
so it's a can of worms. Would it be, you agree it would be a can of worms if it was a Christian teacher who was doing the same thing?
Well, of course, because you know damn well there's going to be people who want to lambaste them and rake them over the coals.
Correct. So circling back to your initial logic, that person is knowingly creating a situation to try to stop the execution of an existing regulation. You think that teacher should be removed from their job, correct?
Not necessarily. If they're praying quietly at their desk, they're engaging in their rights.
Yes, and then if a student asks questions, that was where we were at. The student asks questions, you believe that they should be able to say, well, this is my beliefs, correct? And that they know they are opening themselves and the school.
I would advise them not to do that in school.
Okay. Nope. I like that very much. Thank you. That's perfect answer. That again, like I said, as long as it reconciles, I'm good with it. As long as your opinion, the peanut butter goes on both sides. So with that said, I had another point out, but we fell down a rabbit hole there. We were talking about the deep state. That's right. So my question to you, Koina, because my understanding is that you are pretty well versed in governmental functionality and that is kind of your particular point of interest. Is that safe to assume? Do you believe that it is a government within a government? Because we know that the bureaucracy exists, right? How much do you think the bureaucracy controls our government in our country? And do you think that's by design? That's my questions to you. Kind of putting you on the spot there. So if you need to think about it, or if you're not even fucking there because you left, that's fine too.
I'm here.
Okay, cool.
It is a good question.
Thank you.
Rephrase that first part.
Yeah, no, sure. How much do you believe that the bureaucracy within our federal government actually runs things and actually is the ones in control of our country and our lives? And do you believe? Well, you know what? Let's answer that one first. Let's just start with that.
Maybe a good amount, but it's always going to be like dictated from the top. So like the agency heads will implement rules like the IRS might, change a policy, it comes down from the very top of, say Trump sends it down, head of the IRS appointed by him, implements it. It goes down to, whatever level below them, they implement it below them. It's, cascades down, blah, blah, blah. So obviously the bureaucracy down there is going to be the ones doing everything, if that makes sense.
I do. So they're the hands and the feet, but I'm asking, do you believe that collectively the hands and the feet create a brain?
On their own, no.
Okay. Then the next question there is, well, okay, do you believe that that's the case also within the military-industrial complex, or do you believe that the military-industrial complex is a different sort of beast, different sort of bureaucracy?
What, like all the companies act in concert?
I mean, excuse me. People like General Milley. I don't even know who the fuck General Milley is off the top of my head, and I couldn't tell you which story he was involved in. But I hear a lot of the same high-ranking military officials who are the ones who seem to be the actual shot callers. And the reason that I'm bringing this question up to you specifically is because this, to me, seems like the logical use for the information that Palentir is collecting, right? For militaristic gains. Now, whether that's actually for our defense, are they defending us from ourselves, or are they going to use this to defend us from outside threats? I'm wondering if the bureaucracy that Roddy believes exists within our government, that is acting as some sort of a stop gap, not even a stopgap, is acting as almost a barrier to carrying out the president's orders. Is there really enough control within the bureaucracy for an individual or even a group of like-minded individuals to prohibit or prevent what the president is doing? And if so, do you think that that's part of the system by design, or do you think that that's something that is manifested over time and should probably be dealt with?
I think it might be by design. I don't think it needs to be dealt with. Like I think the agency head would have the free will to make his own decision. And Trump would have his own free will and right to fire him and replace him, implement the rule with someone else.
Okay, so then that aspect, do you agree with the fact, and this is kind of an aside and kind of off topic, but I'm just curious to pick your brain on this. Do you think that the purging of the bureaucrats who do disagree with whoever's in office is appropriate? Like, do you think that much of the that's a better way for me to ask. How much of the government do you think needs to change from one administration to the next to prevent the bureaucracy that you just agreed is the hands and the feet from getting a mind of their own?
I think it's kind of what normally happens, because you have well, you were kind of saying I think you were trying to gauge the bar of which people should be fireable.
Yes,
almost.
Yes, exactly.
The ones that aren't confirmed by the Senate, the ones confirmed by the Senate need to be impeached. So
okay,
if that makes sense. So
yes.
all the ones we heard hearings for, he can't just outright fire them. Those were
even
approved by the Senate.
Even though we know that those are the people who are actually implementing the information handed down from above, and if they are choosing to not to, that is detrimental to the function of the government.
The Senate approved it. Senate can have the right to fire him then.
Okay.
Just like Trump had the right to fire him.
Okay. And understand that I'm not talking about
Senate, but,
I'm not necessarily talking about department heads. I'm talking about department employees, right? I'm talking about should one of the things that
Trump
I see this
to unilaterally change all those employees.
Kind of, yes, that's the question, because that's the most likely usage for this privacy or for the infringement of Palentir is they will be able to classify us by our political leanings. Right. I think that's the worst case scenario here. And because I don't see them using this information against other countries. And there's only a few things other than the fact is what, like Roddy said, actually going against real life criminals. I know that this is a slippery slope argument that when you're the one controlling what is considered a criminal, it becomes very tempting to criminalize everything you don't like. But I can understand that generally that's what they would use it for, but I think the most likely misuse is going to be categorizing American citizens by their political leanings. And so that's okay if you don't bring it to work, as long as you're going to work and doing your job and you're doing what you're told, right? I can work for the IRS and be a staunch libertarian who believes that taxation is full-on theft, as long as I go to work and do my job at the IRS as though that wasn't the case, right? But we all know that not everybody is capable of doing that. So should the IRS then be able to say, well, look, you're making decisions based on your political leanings and are less likely to do the job that we need you to do based on the administration currently at hand. So that's the framing of where I'm asking. How much, now that I've explained what I meant or what I'm looking for, how much do you think they should be able to fire us based on our political opinions?
That is a good question. I don't know. I'm always for the for cause reason of firing, but I don't know if that applies to all of it now. I think that's what the argument about Schedule F, if you hear about it, is.
I have. Tell us more, though. Reiterate it, please. I was literally just hearing anything about it today.
Always in line with it, but I think it's pretty much just the classification of a set of employees at the federal government that doesn't switch over because they're purely bureaucratic. They're not supposed to have any kind of political input. They're the researchers and stuff like that.
And is do you agree that right there is the most likely usage of the combined information about us? Like if
It
AI
could
is
be.
able
It's
to
just flat
cull
out, like,
every Facebook post you've ever made.
yeah, I know. I would not agree with that at all. But yeah, that'd be fucked up. And that's probably the main reason for it. It'd probably lead to the outcomes that they want. But
Yep. Okay.
yeah, I'd be down. I'd be not down. I'd be disagreeable to them
Against.
using any kind of like private information like that.
Like private information as in because that would be easy for AI to figure out everything, your general stances on every subject based on because this is what they're talking about doing, is basically taking all of your social media data and putting it through an AI blender to say, who is this person? And that sounds a lot like pre-crime, right? Once again, I know you've got a lot of knowledge about
Yeah,
the
no,
legal system. Are there circumstances where we're going to punish a person before the crime is actually committed because of the fact that we know they were going to commit that crime, or the likelihood that they were going to commit that crime? In other words, like, well, I guess no, because we would just criminalize the behavior before the crime itself, right? I'm speaking like, for as an example, if we know that you're about to go do a mass terror event at a shopping mall, we would be able to prosecute you for your intention to do the thing, even if you didn't actually do the thing, because we've criminalized the intent, right?
yeah. Can you do it like without the damages?
Exactly. So
victims.
that's the question, is if that overlaps insofar as, can you be guilty of, if you see on every single piece of my social media how staunchly libertarian I am, the odds are I'm going to try to sabotage my job at the IRS, right? Like an AI is literally going to be tasked with what is the likelihood question, right? Like,
Well, yes and no. For one, I think like at like employment level, they'd end up having some kind of regulation, probably saying like the hiring managers can only see like the set of information that applies to the job, and none of it would be able to be related to like political affiliation, if that makes sense.
it does. Well, you're saying that's the way it should be. What do you think the likelihood is that they're going to voluntarily implement that constraint? Like, how are we going to get to that?
I'd
they
be surprised if
would.
it's not that way already,
Okay.
honestly.
In regards to the Palantir thing, because
No,
there
like
are
how government hiring practices are. Like they wouldn't be able to see that kind of information.
because they don't have access to it. But that's the whole point of this, is that the government will have access to that. They will have a unified database of all information on all citizens to be able to make their decisions based on. I gotta assume
No,
that would
I'm
also
following
include
that.
employment.
I think someone would have to be like in the federal hiring practices to know, but
To
I'd
know,
be
yeah.
surprised if they didn't have like just a specific list of things that they can look at, and that wouldn't be on that list. They'd have to like add that after the fact.
Sure, which they would have to do right now. And like I said, they've never had the cause to, because they've never had the resource. But the whole point here is they now are about to have that resource. And so this is how they're most likely going to use it against us, and what I think we should be most afraid of. And so with that said, I'm actually going to go ahead and punt this back, because that, I think, is the biggest concern with this, right? Now, I'm going to punt it back to Roddy real quick, because I know that Speltus is going to have something to say about this too. But you specifically said, Roddy, that if they go looking at your stuff, right, that, and I'm just going to play this out because this is, as I see it, the most likely usage or negative usage of this Palantir program. You were saying that if they go look at you, they're going to be like, oh, well, perfect driving record, and, pays his bills on time, and doesn't have a criminal background, and like as though that these were all necessarily good things. But I also know that you have an online media presence through your history on social media. And if you are going to be held responsible through an AI colander of every single post you've ever made on the internet ever, and that spits out a summarization, a summary of you and your overall political beliefs. Right now, Big Daddy Trump's in office, so you've got the high ground. But the likelihood is that's not going to continue after this 4 years. So that said, next 4 years, whenever Karine Jean-Pierre is the president and she has access to everything that there is about Roddy, do you think that it's going to be easy for Roddy to find a job that actually gets him through the days? Do you think that you should be held against, like, this is the situation? And I'm saying, I know you didn't say that you necessarily wanted this and that you are against this in general, but you were shrugging your shoulders because you didn't see the direct harm for you. This is how it's most likely to splash on your boots, is the next administration is going to have the exact same resources at their disposal that this one does. And the difference is this one has set precedents that I don't think they're going to be comfortable with when the shoe changes. So do you, now that you've listened to everybody else, have you changed your position at all? Do you think maybe it is something that's worthy of attention? You are muted, good sir. Oh, we see those lips moving, but we don't hear nothing.
Nope,
There you are.
you're right. If I'm correct, it's already illegal to target a group of people just because of their political stand.
Let's use the word so far, because Koina made something similar there, but we have to use the word so far because so many things have been upended since Trump has come into office, and Trump has demonstrated an absolute willingness to do shit that nobody has ever done before, to undo that which has been done, and to do that which has never been done. So it's very likely that that's the next step. Once they have this resource, do you really think, based on the other decisions being made, that they're not going to use it this way?
I haven't seen any indication of the people that are in there now that'll do that.
Have you followed Peter Thiel at all? Do you know anything about his politics? The guy who runs the company Palentir, the guy who is the forefront. I'm going to send you a video, Ruddy. Actually, no, I linked it. I linked it just today in the Discord channel. I would love for you to sit there and watch it. And it's only 30 minutes, but it was shit that I never knew. And the thing is, I watched this video about 8 months ago. It was while Trump was still running for office, right around the time that Elon Musk got involved. And it is a very well articulated pinboard showing you who's connected to whom and what their motivations are. Such as, do you know who it was that got J.D. Vance to be the vice president? Did it seem weird to you that J.D. Vance was the next one after Mike Pence? What do you think personally was his motivation? And for what it's worth, this is not a Trump attack, but this is related, I promise. I will draw this back. Just off the top.
I actually think that J.D. Vance was probably the best pick.
Why do you think that?
Because he's the articulate congressman. He comes from a lower class background. He's a military member who paid his way through college with his GI Bill. His wife, if we're going to do the identity politics thing, his wife is a woman from another nationality. I mean, like, if you're looking at it politically, it makes sense.
Okay.
I can't think of anybody else that would have been a better pick.
So that was for all the DEI reasons. Okay.
Right.
You just outlined the DEI.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what do you know about J.D. Vance's politics? Or his political ties?
I know that he was against Trump for a while. I've listened to some of the things that he said back when he was in Congress. I like some of it. Some of it I was like, I'm not so sure about that. But again, the question comes down to if Peter Thiel is a George Soros
he's way worse, way fucking worse.
Okay, so if that's the case, then we definitely need to have him on the radar. But unless his behavior is illegal, what are you going to do about it?
That is a great question, Roddy. That is exactly the question that we have to ask and what we're here for tonight. So I'm going to fill in some gaps real quick. Okay. Because again, I want you to watch this video and I want everybody to watch this video. Koine, have you watched the video I'm talking about by chance? The dark MAGA thing? Okay. So I'm going to summarize, but in my Discord channel in the bullshitting just a little ways, like literally just today, because I watched it again yesterday to re-prepare for this conversation tonight. And And I had hoped, for the record, just so everybody knows, there's a couple people who didn't show up tonight. So I'm very sad. They were the people who are actually involved in the AI industry and would be able to answer certain questions that I can't, right? Or would be able to give context that I'm not. So long story short, JD Vance is actually the hyper techno bro. JD Vance was put into Trump's radar because of Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and about 5 other names that you've probably never heard before. These people, just to give you some context, are not the same people as Project 2025, but they were happy to piggyback off of the Project 2025 momentum. These people are more adjacent to Steve Bannon, insofar as these are the people behind the scenes who are actually the ones playing the 5D chess that everybody thought was Trump. No. That's these guys. And these guys have figured out the answer to your question, Roddy, is we need to figure out what the fuck to do about it, because they've already figured out how to do it. And they are literally play by play. Like I said, this video predicted exactly what has happened for the last 100 and some odd days of Donald Trump's, like, to a fucking T. Exactly the order things would be done in, and it's unnerving to go back and rewatch it a second time and see how many things they were right about, because their game plan is to steadily dismantle the United States as we know it. Their plan is to create a technocratic nation, a group of nation states. They want to dissolve the United States in any functional, recognizable way, and they want to have essentially the bigger version of what Elon Musk just did with SpaceX or Tesla or whatever in Texas, where he created his own city, where he gets to be Lord High exalted in his town of his name, of his choosing. Donald Trump has come forward actually saying this on record, that he would like to open up public lands to create new city-states that will be go to the best plans laid out for it, which all sounds kind of nifty until you understand that this is literally part of the game plan of dismantling the United States. So if you look back at everything that has been done, you can see all of the things that Trump has done that have been negative impact on the United States and have had, like, well, that's a weird thing. Like, isn't it weird that the guy, Donald Trump, who is most obsessed with loyalty, would take as his vice president a guy who, as you just said, was talking shit about him just a couple of months ago? Does that seem like that's normal? Does that seem like it makes sense? Donald Trump respects money, and Donald Trump knows that all of these tech oligarchs have way more money than he does. And so he knows that he has got the attention, that Project 2025 and the backing of MAGA. These people are the nerds that used to get punked and bullied in high school, who have now grown up to be the ones in control of these ultra powerful mass destruction weapons called AI. And best yet, they have their voices in the ear of the cult leader currently in control of our country. So, well, again, you can giggle, but you would have to be lying to tell me that you do not agree that there are people who are so obsessed with Trump. Even Trump has acknowledged, I could shoot somebody in the street and get away with it. He said that out loud. He knows he has a cult following. He knows that he has a group of people who are ride or die, period. We saw them January 6th, which even that was predicted, for the record, in this video. So, like I said, check out the video, but to answer all of the questions there, and now I'm going to kick this down to Spelt This now that he's back, because this is directly in his line of sight. This is anarcho-capitalism at its finest. So this is the actual thing that would happen. You've got two choices in an anarchist state. You're either going to be run by warlords or you're going to be run by business lords. And so landlords, we'll call them landlords. Warlords or landlords, right? And so we're currently driving down a road that's going to take us to maybe both. So my question then is, if that's the direction we're going, how can we fucking stop it? Back to Roddy's question, what can we possibly fucking do? So Spelt this. Now that you got your headphones back and you got your drink on, tell me how it is that you think we can avoid turning into the survival of the fittest in any sort of a state where the people, again, just so that we can understand the connection here, the people who are in control pulling the strings, and this is demonstrable. Watch the video. You can follow the fucking links yourself. But the people who are pulling the strings and funding all of the decisions being made by our current administration want an end to the United States as we know it and want to create city-states, communes, let's call them. How do you think that that's going to be any better than what we got now? Yep, it's on you.
You ended with I have a lot to say. I wanted to address too. I was looking at the chat. I posted a few links about some of the stuff you were talking about, and somebody in the chat was
Appreciate you.
asking about a link for the Discord.
Oh yeah,
to let
just
you know
if you
while I go talk
exclamation
about
point
it.
Discord will get it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so one of the scrolls actually says
they
it.
were asking to give you a link, I think, to post in the Discord.
Oh yeah,
Can you
no,
link
yeah.
this in
So
the
so
Okay.
you gotta give me a little bit of time to be able to give people. I've been burned too many times. So real quick, public service announcement before we continue. I've been doing this for a few years now, and I've had every possible negative thing happen, and I've figured out my own solutions to most of those problems. Whenever I'm doing an open panel, it is an open panel to everybody who's already existing in my Discord. This way, there is some sort of a filter. I don't let people into the room unless you have been active in the Discord channel, and I see more or less that you're a real person. I have gotten hate rated way too many times, so there are barriers behind barriers behind barriers. So when you first join the Discord channel, and I even say it in the thing, just give me a minute. As soon as I'm done with the stream, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna give you your first level of permissions. You just gotta be a normal human being. Like, you can be any political. I don't ban people because of their political beliefs, just their behaviors. So that said, yeah, you don't get to just join in off the streets. You can't just be any old riffraff. But give it a minute, and I'll give you your permissions. You should be able to at least read the rule set while you wait and enjoy the show. So back to it. Spelt this.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And so, yeah, like, all right. I didn't want to. You ended there with something that that's exactly where I was going to go with, like, oh, the community. I forget exactly what you said, but I was going to be like, oh, like, I mean, at a base, like, and this might sound ridiculous, but I have a lot to say about it. The thing that's going to seize the means of production, overthrow the system, is communistic community potato gardens. And what we need, so my neighbor that's over on the other side of me had to move because they were having issues with, first of all, the landlord, who is out of state. The landlord is an out of state individual, doesn't even live in this state. And then furthermore, issues within the city as well, with like how much they've propped up infrastructure, just going so quickly, not being too concerned about, how well this is going to last and stand the test of time. And so this house has a lot of issues, and currently I'm wondering if anybody's going to buy it at all, and I'm wondering what's going to happen. And my suggestion would be, um, because I ran into my neighbor and he was like, "Oh, they should tear that." He came back to go get some mail and he was like, "They should knock it down and tear it down. The basement floods all the time. And it's not even I think it's just a crawl space. It's not even like a basement, so it's even more difficult to just get in there to attempt to like get even machinery in there to clean this up." And so he said something about tearing it down, and I was like, I always talk about this idea too. Jeff Lawton, he actually um, so he's Jeff Lawton's in Syria doing humanitarian work where he was growing mushrooms in the desert. It's called the Greening the Desert Project. This literally blew scientists' mind. They went to go study this because they were like, it's not possible to grow plants in this area. It's in the Dead Sea area. The ground's too salty. You can't do that. And so he was growing mushrooms that were eating the salt and using it for nutrients that then allowed the ground to be fertile enough to grow other plants that were maintaining and holding water structures enough to then he used plants that were native to the area that then like a food garden that would worked within its like a in North America. I mentioned talking about the Native American societies. It's a sister style. You can look up like Amazon um, uh, forestry practices. I forget the exact vocab word, but they have really good. It's a sister program where the plants work together like squash would shade the squash leaves shade like the lower there's some sort of food you grow below that, and like the beans can grow up the corn and keep the corn stalk a little stronger actually by growing up it, and now you have a second food as well, the beans on top of the corn. And so that was always the practice of growing stuff, and that's what he's been doing in the desert. And people were like, this isn't even like possible, like how is this even and he these are his words, all the world's problems can be solved in a garden. And so it as much as it is a joke, there, jokes are based in truth, they're based in reality, that's what makes them funny. All the world's problems can be solved in a garden. So the solution to a lot of these problems is, as wild as it might sound, oh, what's the solution to this like police state that's using AI to, track what kind of porn we look at so they can determine whether or not we're a left or right winger, is some sort of
Or if we're
communistic
likely to
potato
commit
garden. But
domestic
it
violence.
is. Yeah, that, and so like,
Well, so real
I
quick,
look at issues.
you brought it back,
Yeah.
but this is an important question. Does your garden grow Samsung S22s?
Okay, so if we grow hemp, we can manufacture the hemp into a lot of stuff. You can
Like
use the
rare earth
hemp
metals?
oil and all these sorts of stuff to design rubber. Hear me out. To design rubbers and silicones that can be used in these electronics. And we can also design carbon fiber styles of things based off of the hemp. And so yes, we can technically grow a S25 in a garden. It takes a lot of work and a lot of science, and it's probably, we got to save it for another stream. But I swear to you, you can
That's
build
gonna
an
be
entire
that's gonna
car
be an
and engine
interesting
out of hemp
biome. I'm
and run it on
definitely
it.
interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so circling back to the question though, because here's
Yes.
because you actually used this, you literally painted a picture that supports my position. How long do you think it's gonna take of you and your potato garden before Elon Musk buys the entire state around you?
Okay,
Or if
we
not
see
Elon
issues with
Musk,
that.
then whatever your
Bezos,
local, or no, let's go
Microsoft.
the other direction. Whatever your local criminal syndicate is, whatever your local gang
I can
or
give you a local example actually that happened to me
sure.
locally.
I mean, if
A
you'd like,
local
but
grocery store
go ahead.
purchased house property. They forced these people out of their houses. People did not want to move out of it, and the government, to an extent, I was pretty young at the time, so I didn't actually know exactly what was happening. I was asking my mom about what was happening because they forced this little block out of their houses, gave them, the money that they gave them for it. The people that waited actually got a lesser deal because inevitably the government came in. I believe the local government, and was like, we want this grocery store to be open because it'll help the neighborhood. And then it did not actually end up opening for a while. A grocery store did open there, but it ended up being smaller to the point that having moved these houses was not a valuable effort. And so I could point to, again, even just an infinite number of examples, even something I saw growing up from where I was a child, where paving over some sort of area that could be a garden, that could be a community space, that could be a space where families are raising children that contribute to society, is always for sure going to be a net loss, regardless of, how even now when you look at that space, it is a grocery store still now to this day. But at the time, the company that bought it was not able to open the grocery store, and it's a Save a Lot now, which I would have a lot of social systemic issues targeting the ideas of food gardens to go on about. But do you have thoughts about that before I continue here?
Damn the pavement! Fight, stand, rail against the driveways. Yeah, no,
That's right.
I gotcha.
Dirt driveways.
So
You
So
could
in
have a
that world, I
driveway.
couldn't make a driveway.
It's just dirt. Grow some grass. Grow some food in that driveway.
what did you say, Quina?
So in that world, I couldn't have a driveway.
Right, exactly. If we go full communist,
No,
you're not
dirt
allowed to have
driveway.
concrete. So, well, now, so the funny thing is, okay, so here's the thing. There is some level of what you're saying that and this is one of the things that Roddy and I actually agree on, is some level of self-sufficiency and subsistence living, right? Trying your best to be sustainable. But the thing is, when we're talking about sustainability, we are thinking more along the lines of a in the olden days kind, at least when it comes to Roddy. Whereas to me, vertical gardening, I think, is the right answer. You're talking about how you think the solution. This I will counter to
All of
you.
it.
I will counter to you with a very direct engagement with what you just said. This is one of the things that I think that we should be funding with government. This is where a little bit of my socialism shows up, right? Or what I'm told is socialism. I think that rather than having food deserts, I think that we have reached the point where we have the technology to have facilities, buildings that are very low cost to run, AI operated and automated, that is a vertical hydroponic plant system that grows foods and distributes it for free to the user, or damn close to free. So I believe that this should be something that is a
Amazon could do
subsidized
that.
food easily. This should be a subsidized food program, and that's the right answer right there. I think that is where capitalism could do right, is if Bezos took a fraction of his fucking money and did what I just said. I think everybody would be like, you know what? That Bezos dude's pretty all right, for that matter. And now this is a different version of the government could possibly fix it. How about if every single city plant is a food-bearing plant? So in other words, when you're walking down the street in your local town, every tree or bush or whatever that is planted everywhere is a food bearing
let
plant.
people wake
So-
up in the
and you
morning,
just
walk
go
to
out,
work,
whether
pick a peach
you're
off your neighbors.
that's
Yep.
right, whether you're homeless, well,
say
it's not
hello
even
to
your
them on your way
neighbors.
to work.
No, it's
Yep.
not even your neighbors. Although this is something that my
It's
wife and I
everybody's.
actually
It's
did
the
do.
communities.
We
It's the
literally
communities.
we planted a tree and a fruit bearing plant in the front yard, and the plan is to hang a sign on it, want one take one, because again,
Nice.
people will.
Beautiful.
And it's like I mean, there's no reason
what
for
I'm
me
talking
to
about.
not to, right? That said,
Exactly.
this is a way that capitalism and government could actually solve the problem that you think us sitting together elbow to elbow in a potato garden is going to solve. I think that both of them are probably necessary.
You're painting it that way. You can chill out in your lawn chair and drink a beer. I will pick the potatoes out and make hash browns. I promise you.
That's fine.
I just need some company. I need some
Rod-
moral support.
I'll have a tree and Roddy will have the cows. So, Koina, can you cook?
Perfect.
I'll fish.
Oh, you'll fish? Oh, snap.
yeah.
Good God.
It's great. See,
Thank you, because I can't.
we solved it.
Well, now, for what it's
We
worth,
just
and
created society.
And again, I don't want to fall too far away from the conversation topic here, although I am starting to think that we might be poking the edges of the subject matter. So it's possible that we might move on. But to answer your question, this is something that we actually did come up with on the stream. Circling back to what we were talking about earlier, you were talking about it's circular. I believe that we just call it a horseshoe theory. That was my understanding of the horseshoe theory. Like, I guess if you want to call it circle theory, that's cool. But ultimately, Roddy and Barbie, they kind of circled back and touched tips on a lot of fucking subjects, including subsistence living and self-sufficiency. They both agreed, but they had different reasons and motivations. For that matter, what we actually did think of, I don't remember, I'll take full credit because I'm pretty sure it was all my idea or my suggestion, and they were all like, yeah, that seems like a swell plan. The way that we could potentially have what most people think of as communism, I would think of as more communism, would be for people autonomous of the system as it exists. This is how this movement begins, just so you know, how you could possibly implement this in your local area. You talk to all of the people in your neighborhood, and this, for the record, is how it once was. You talk to all of the people in your personal neighborhood and say, hey, what industry are you in? What do you do? What do you know how to do? What do you like doing? Oh, you love painting fences? Well, hot diggity dog, I'll tell you what, I like growing weed. So how about you come paint my fence and I'll give you an ounce and everybody's happy. That is how you start what you're talking about. And then you can actually start expanding that onto a more community-based stage if you have cards and a registration of your skill sets, so that whenever, let's say I'm your local pest control guy, right? I'm a card carrying commie here. And so when you show up and you call me to your house and it says, I get you and you show me that card, I'm like, oh, okay, there's no charge today, buddy. Be there when I call you. And then on the same token, whatever that person's skill or service or ability is, when somebody else calls them, they pay that shit forward too. And they're like, whenever they get there and they see that card, they're like, oh. Now, the problem with this, and this is literally where it falls apart in every conservative and or hardcore capitalist believer, is what do we do with the person who has no skills? What do you do with the person who, when you show up at their door, they're too busy being stoned and useless? What do you do with the person who, for whatever reason, doesn't have any interest? Well, the actual answer is you don't get one of those cards, buddy. But now we're creating some sort of a weird exclusionary club, which is counter to what a communist would actually want. So there is no way that I've thought of, but that's the closest thing, is communism. So do you remember that conversation, Roddy? And am I, do you still feel like, at least in your locale, that the lawyer down the street is going to cut you a break and you're going to cut him a break when he needs a slab of beef or whatever you're hawking these weeks?
Yeah, that was what we discussed, and yeah, that you can still barter with people today. It's just not on a wide.
Are you
system.
sure about that? Can we fact check that? Because I believe that was outlawed because it's not trackable or fungible, and they can't tax that sort of bartering. I'm looking at you, Koina, but if somebody can double check, I feel like bartering in that manner has been outlawed. That's not just legal, or maybe it's only in certain areas. I remember reading something about this though.
It's probably certain areas because I remember a barter section on Craigslist, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah,
And a quick search online.
Yeah, please do.
And by the way, in order to implement your card system, you're probably going to want Palentir to
have a database. I was thinking it as I fucking said it.
database.
Thank you for not letting me get past that. I thought it as I said it, but I didn't want to. I was already giving myself enough caveats. So good job, Roddy. Good catch.
It's okay.
What are you seeing there, Spelt?
I'm seeing, here I can post it in the chat as well. I'm seeing the IRS actually does have a topic about bartering income, right? So it does seem like something you might report on your taxes or
if there's a certain value or something of that nature. Like I said,
Yeah,
I know
I'll
that
post
there's
a
a
link
thing
back
about this because like for farmers markets and stuff like that, they have like rules in a lot of them about you can't swap a potato for a tomato. I don't remember what the logic was, but there was something. This has been a fucking while ago, so and I have a fallible memory, so. But that said, you think it is? I'm going to really bend your mind here, because again, this is something else that Roddy and I had to do with our previous anarcho-communist. Okay, so you agree with a bartering system, right? You believe that I should be able to trade a tomato with you for your potato? Simple yes or no?
Yeah, I'll say yes. If you're looking for a simple yes or no, I'll say yes.
And now, with that said, do you agree that we have to agree upon the value? And do you think that your tomatoes are worth, or your grown potatoes? Do you think that one of my tomatoes is worth two of your potatoes, or do you think that one of your potatoes is worth two of my tomatoes? How do we agree upon that in this situation? We just agree amongst ourselves?
I guess the idea would be, to a certain extent, I would argue that the best economy, in my personal opinion, would be one where you, to an extent, didn't agree on the value. You agree on a price for it to be sold at, but that's the whole point of bartering as well. It's not just bartering, it's a conversation about what is the value of this item. It's this value to me, and it's this value to you. And that's both true in both of our realities, and let's come together to try to reach an agreement as to what. And if we don't, of course, we should try to teach this sort of education. Like, there should be no hard feelings in that. It's a business transaction. That's how economics works. You have to walk away if they're not willing to reach a price that you're willing to pay for. So
you are a free market trade communist anarchist? I'm having troubles. My brain is clipping out.
Confusing when you put it like that.
My brain is clipping.
I hate free market. I do not like the.
But that's what you just described, sir.
Is that free market?
Koina, correct me if I'm wrong. Did he not just describe
a government regulation about pricing?
No,
it's just two individuals meeting. That's like contracting, right to contract.
So that would be free trade, right?
Yeah.
That would be, so again, like
no, that's kind of like what we have right now. It's just not
Because I was
He
gonna
wasn't
say,
talking about regulations. He's just saying like he's fine for bartering.
Right. Well, it's kind of what we have right now. But what I'm the point that I'm driving at, and where I was going to be trying to hold your hand to there, Spelt, is the fact that we have we currently do this, but we have a system in place for us to be able to agree on the value, because what I think that your tomato or your potatoes were two of my tomatoes, but Koina's raspberries trump both of us, and we're all fucked without Roddy's sides of beef. So what are we gonna do? We have to have something. You know what? Plus, Roddy's beef is ready when my tomatoes aren't. So I'll tell you what. Can you give me that piece of beef now, Roddy, and then I'll give you my tomatoes when I have it. I'll tell you what, let's come up with a little thing, a little token. Let's I don't know, something to, like a placeholder to say this is how many tomatoes.
I
Yeah,
volunteer
yeah.
future for this.
Can
So,
I
like I
ask-
said,
can I
literally
ask a question to the panel?
you can't. Well, and I'm going to throw this back to you right now, because
Okay, thank
I want you to answer first before you ask. How do you not see that what you're talking about, the bartering system, is exactly what we have in the capitalist system you currently think is failing?
It's close. It's close. It's very different. And my question will help answer this. Do we know what determines the price of things right now? Does the panel know what determines the price of things right now?
We found this out one time. I'm gonna listen. Does anybody else know? I remember I heard this and I was like, well, that does seem weird.
It is.
Koina, do you know off the top of your head?
I just say the market.
The market. Yeah, no,
Whatever
it's
someone's willing
there's
to pay for it.
What does that mean? Trump says that a lot. The market will work itself out, right? The prices determine themselves, apparently.
Roddy.
And so
Do you have an answer to this question, Roddy?
Well, that's what the futures market was set up for, is so that farmers could guarantee what the price would be when their grain was harvested.
While they're still
And
growing.
so the Trade Commission and futures markets is what sets and regulates the price.
All right. So what's the answer from you, Spelt?
okay, that's yeah. So well, now that it's moved into modern when computer systems, an AI actually determines what it is the price of.
You mean an
when we talk
algorithm?
about
You're saying
supply and-
AI, but you mean an algorithm.
Yes. Yep. That you're right.
Cool.
Yeah. To an extent. Definitely. Most
So-
definitely. Because the vocab word they were using was definitely algorithm when I was reading about this. Go ahead.
Yep. No,
Jim.
that's okay.
I have a
Well,
lot to say about this.
No. Well, I was just
go ahead.
going to say, I mean, again, the algorithm is nothing but a series of mathematical equations,
Mhm.
and ultimately there. So when we use the word algorithm, we could just use the word math.
It is. That's exactly what's happening. Good
Equations are what's
statement.
setting the prices.
It's reading. It's when we talk about supply and demand, and this is my understanding. People can go look into this themselves. My understanding is there's currently a computer system, multiple computer systems, multiple people that maintain this at all at a majority of the stock exchanges. But also then specifically too, then at, like right the New York Stock Exchange, where it's the computer system is maintaining understanding using math to determine how many people are buying oranges, this many people have bought them in the world based off of, and I don't exactly know what they've programmed it to do. Are they programming it off the weather or like how other sorts of factors into exactly how it's equating this? But then through all that information that they're telling it, then it goes, okay, this is the price of oranges now based off of how many stocks were traded today, how much of this company did that, what the weather's like in this area, how many people, where we're headed to in the next bit of the year. It calculates all that and it spits out the number, and that's what we see on the stock exchanges.
And
is
so-
Did you
my
ever watch
understanding
the
of
movie
current situation.
Trading Places?
I've not. Trading Places.
Okay, so if you go back and watch, it's an Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd movie, and this is exactly what the movie was about. You had a rich guy and a bum off the street who got swapped because these two elite rich jerks bet $1 that the bum on the street could do just as good as the Harvard graduate futures guy for their company. And so when they found out that they got played by these rich guys, they plan a plot to steal the orange report so they can buy and sell the price to their advantage. So when the orange report gets released and they say, The weather is not going to negatively affect the orange crop this year. So trade away. It's a pretty interesting movie, but
They
So
wrote articles about this, the monkey theory, that a monkey can actually determine any stock. A monkey with like a typewriter could determine a better stock than any of the current top leaders at the top, claiming that they're like the stock bros claiming they can determine these things.
I think you might be conflating your, or you might be overlapping. You might be. I keep using the word
No,
conflating. Why is that word stuck in my head? I think it's a monkey with a typewriter will eventually bang out Shakespeare, which has been disproven.
That's true, but they also use this for I'll post a link.
I thought
about
it was a goldfish thing. Well, so what I was going to say is there's a guy named Michael Reeves who literally did this. He set up a sensor on his goldfish tank and had his goldfish picking his stocks based on his swimming patterns. And he did indeed do well in the stock markets by playing the goldfish. So, but that's just chaos and random success. Like, I mean, that's like flipping a coin, and sometimes you're gonna win, and yeah, hey, look, you won. That makes sense. So, that's it. Going back to the question that you asked there, because that was I heard an overlap between something you and Roddy were both talking about. When you were talking about your concerns with this system, right? Excuse me. You were talking about how the question in your mind is, who is the one that is programming this? What is the motivations of the programmers of that algorithm, right? I feel like that circles back to what, and I don't know if the person who was asking this question in chat, we never got to it, and I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the conversation at the time, but Roddy had made sort of a castaway comment about how, regarding the people with guns being in the weather in NORAD, or not NORAD, NOAA, right? Like, why does the weather monitoring department of the government needs 3 parts armed military to 1 part civilian contractor? And the person in the chat thought that was Roddy saying something of that the weather was somehow being manipulated or something like that. But it was more, I think, and I'm going to, like I said, pitch this back over there to Roddy on this, but it was more about the fact that who is the one who's driving that weather department or whatever. And so once again, it's the same. Who does the algorithms? Who is the one making the decisions about what, like, who's the guy with the gun in the room where the algorithms are applied to the weather? Is that kind of what you were getting at, Roddy? Am I mischaracterizing you?
No. What I'm talking about is the National Weather Service placing an order for 46,000 rounds of ammunition.
And when did that happen? Do you have a link? Please tell me you have a link.
Sending it to you now.
Yeah, just drop it in the chat. That way everybody can click it. The National Weather Service ordered 40,000 rounds. Yeah, that I feel like I would have heard about this.
Due to a clerical error in federal business vendor process, a solicitation for ammunition and targets for the NOAA Fisheries Office and law enforcement mistakenly identified NOAA's Weather Service as the requesting office. So this looks like it's a mistake.
It was a clerical error. Okay, and now that you said that about the National Wildlife Service being attached to the National Weather Service, that would actually, or the Fish and Wildlife.
Feasible,
yeah, that again, we know that unfortunately our park rangers are being kitted out like fucking military guys because of the cartels and whatnot growing shit in the woods. Not to mention, you're worried about the border. I mean, again, those people use those borders are oftentimes heavily wooded and related to the parks and wildlife people. So it would make sense that they would need some level of ammunition. And if a clerical error took 4,000 rounds to 40,000 rounds, that doesn't sound that far-fetched. But again, that's just me shooting from the hip.
Okay, so does the IRS need weapons?
Well, yes. Why wouldn't they? Well, so let me ask you a question back. Who enforces when the IRS says you owe them money and you say, no, I don't, who is it that shows up at the door to collect?
Should be the FBI.
Really? You think the FBI has time for the IRS? Like, why would the IRS not do those sorts of things internally? The FBI has their own fish to fry. They got their own shit to do. The IRS has a enforcement wing of their policies, just like any other.
Well, and so again, that's the problem that I have, because when you start
Too many
allowing every
enforcements.
group to have their own militarized law enforcement department, then what you have is the.
Should we defend those police, Roddy?
Well, it's not a matter of defending the police. It's a matter of the more compartmentalized, the more departments you have, the easier it is to obfuscate,
foster corruption.
hide. Oh, look, it wasn't the weather service. It was bad paperwork. So we have to trust that that's what it is. Now, in this situation, it seems like that's the case. But the whole point is the reason that was clarified the way it was is because people went, hey, why is the weather service buying this ammunition? Because it came to light, they had to come out and go, oh, this is where the clerical error was. And it's okay.
Even if there wasn't a clerical error, though, Roddy, let me just punt this back at you. Would you not agree that in the when those people, you're a Second Amendment fan, right? Like you support the Second Amendment, right? And the right of a person to defend themselves.
Sure.
So do you agree that the NWS, the weather service, at some times whenever they go out to do field work, might be finding themselves in a situation where they might need to be able to defend themselves?
I can't imagine why they would need the government to buy their arms for them.
Because that's part of their job, man. They buy me my fucking my PPE, right? They're going to buy me my hard hat. Why would they not also buy me my sidearm? Like that's what.
There are plenty of departments where you provide your own service weapon.
Does the FBI buy their guns? Their own guns?
Does the CIA? Can somebody fact check that real quick? Does the CIA? I honestly don't know. That's a good question.
You're allowed to use your own service weapon in some of these departments, but it has to be cleared.
But you're provided one from them.
In those two instances, yes. But there have been government jobs and places where I was told that I would be providing my own service weapon. So I just didn't take the position, but.
Sure. Well, so I suppose that there are some where that might be the case.
No, I don't think the National Weather Service should be provided firearms. You want to carry, but bring your own.
Okay.
Again, that's why
I did look that up real quick.
Yeah.
It just FBI and CIA agents are issued bureau weaponry. I can't speak for other agencies. I'll end
but those two specifically. Thank you. All right.
Yep.
But okay, so Roddy, back to it though. Regardless of the department, do you think that? I think where Koina was probably the next step there. Do you think that the FBI and the CIA should provide their own weapons?
No, I think if you're going into those two branches, the government providing them, especially because.
What about Homeland Security?
I don't know.
And the IRS is right there next to both of those, exactly. The TSA.
I don't think the IRS. I don't think we should have a TSA. I don't think the IRS should have a militarized enforcement arm.
You don't think like criminal tax fraud could ever endanger an agent's life?
Well, that's when you call in local law enforcement, because if you're going into a jurisdiction to serve paperwork on said Al Capone, you call local law enforcement, and then people say, "Oh, well, that's what if dirty cops let them know?" Okay, well, how far down the rabbit hole do we want to go?
Why do have the FBI then?
Well, yeah, there you go. That's what I was about to say. So real quick, Roddy, that Al Capone thing is great if you're in Chicago. But if you're
Right.
in Podunk, nowhere, Eastern Washington, and the dude who
Then you
runs the
call
town there,
Cowlitz County. You talk to their sheriff, because they're technically supposed to notify the sheriff and get permission to come in the county anyway. That's why, with county sheriffs being the highest directly elected law enforcement official in the state, they have the right to tell the feds, "You're not coming on here until I decide what to do with this."
is that true? Can
Now,
So
anybody
you're saying
confirm?
you would want to make a federal agency have to enforce their laws through a state agency?
yes,
You want the states to enforce federal law.
I want them to work together so that there is a check and a balance. Yes.
The circle.
I think federal needs to enforce federal.
They can enforce it, but that's when you have the IRS agent, the attorney, show up to the sheriff and say, "Hey, this is what we have. Here's our warrant. Here's our information. We need you and however many officers you think will needed to be
More than we
to
have is the
issue
answer. What
this."
then?
Okay, well, they'll have to figure it out.
Do they have
Here's
right
the
to
problem.
commandeer officers from another place?
Maybe it's not like they haven't done it before. When there's an emergency situation, they find the agent. And here's why. Because I remember, is it Myron Gaines, Fresh and Fit, would talk about when he's going to do a drug bust. And he says, "Hey, I need some agents to come, and it's a Friday afternoon at 3, and the agents are like, "Oh, well, I got a birthday party I want to go to, and this and that." Like, he would complain that these guys weren't doing their fucking jobs.
Sure.
Maybe
Just
in
like
his
Right.
opinion, but it's probably not a requirement. That's why they didn't do it.
No, it is their job. That's the thing. He would complain about it and then go to the local guys and say, "Hey, will you help me with this?" And the local guys always volunteered.
because they feel
So-
cool because they're
Volunteered?
playing with the big boys.
Okay, fine. Let them feel cool. They're playing with the big boys. Like,
What was that
the-
word again? Volunteered? They weren't
Yeah,
required?
voluntold.
well, because he's getting people from the local area, they are volunteering. Yes.
No, I think what Coin is saying is maybe they were told by the local, like their boss, "Hey, you're going," and they're just
No, I'm
more
saying
concerned about their
the
job.
He
last
didn't.
guys
He
weren't
didn't give
required
that
to go the
indication.
same, like
He
these
said
guys weren't
these.
required. They're volunteering to go.
He said,
Gotcha.
yeah, he said these people were more than willing to jump in and help out, especially when he found out it was for child trafficking or drugs or whatever. So again, the amount of people who are allowed to just clock in, swing around at their desk, get their paychecks, like, yeah,
You know,
I
some
don't feel
agencies have a policy just to not cooperate with like federal agencies.
okay. Well, then that should be dealt with. Like, again, you can always be cynical and come up with reasons why people shouldn't work together. Fine, fuck it. Let's just let the government burn it all. Like, at what point do people
jump in on
have
that?
to be responsible and do their effing job because they get a paycheck and we all pay it?
Yeah, like
I
I
think
think
that.
that gets.
Oh, go ahead.
Or if there were other thoughts. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, like I think that idea gets thrown out a lot. It's like, oh, like, well, what do you do? What are we doing to fix it? How are we going to solve this problem? And it's like, oh, any hypothetical could get thrown out as to like what the problem's going to be, and like sort of the answer always is, oh, we're going to solve this the way that it always gets solved when the problem arises. We will fix it. And it's good to sit around and have these sorts of like hypotheticals. I think that arguably is what sets us apart from like the animals, right? Is the ability to an extent, like, and this is could start a bit of controversy here, but see into the future, right? By like having these hypotheticals going, well, if we were to choose to do this, that would happen. And so therefore we shouldn't do that. Or we should because it will lead to a benefit in this way. And so I think that those sorts of things are very beneficial. And this is where, like, with what you were saying there, Naughty. Um,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're saying some things about like the state working with the federal government working with the state government, and a horseradish has commented about my opinions being contradicting, and I definitely I can hear that, and so what I wanted to say earlier was like, oh, like am I allowed to redefine, if you'd allow me to, right? I'm attempting to redefine the words to an extent, like I don't want to redefine them, right? Like this is actually the way that I see them being defined and the way that I'm interpreting them to how I'm seeing it. Like anarchism, communism, these things that I'm talking about don't inherently suggest that a state can't exist, that a government can't exist, that there shouldn't be law and order. It's an attempt to suggest that all of those things can exist in a way that's fluid and functioning in a circle where it's truly we the people. It's truly a we the people coming together, and because we are the government, and currently there's a separation between that. The government doesn't represent what it is, and that's the people. If there's thoughts, I'll say more, but if there's thoughts, please, other people jump in. Feel free.
I actually agree with him. I think that anarchism, as we understand anarchism in theory, is very different. Anarchism comes from a country, like the term itself comes from a Greek country that was just no rulers, not no rules. And there's a very different concept between the two of something being enforced and something that has rules. Even like many early liberal thinkers that I actually personally hold to believed in a natural set of rules along with the political enforcing of that. And many people who are on both sides of the anarchism compass also believe in such a concept of, well, there's moral rules in a society, or there's a moral law that you have to abstain, and the state itself cannot disobey that. But I wouldn't say necessarily, even though I disagree with the definition, that anarchism in theory doesn't come without government. It just comes without government that enforces stuff uh, inherently immoral, which I disagree with. I don't think government enforces anything that's immoral in concept, depending on which government you believe in.
You're saying that you.
Doesn't that
Yeah,
tie into the Chevron theory?
What do you mean? What's the Chevron theory?
So the Chevron theory is that agencies are allowed to interpret laws as they deem fit, and it's up
Yeah.
to Congress and them. Yeah, which is something that I think was just recently
Never heard of
overturned,
this.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can-
So
Can you give
It's
me
pretty much like Chevron deference was the
Chevron
agencies
deference?
Thank you.
themselves. Yeah, had the deference to interpret their own policies. So like if there was a judicial question on like what something was like based on a agency policy, they would refer to the agency's kind of definition of it, except for the like major questions doctrine, which is like major political questions, the court would interpret it still.
how do they quantify what a major question is?
If it's political.
Okay.
Pretty
Okay,
much.
so
It's
something
kind of
we
been
figured out
subjective.
here is literally everything is political.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be that guy, but how do they quantify political?
Actually, not every. Some things are purely
It is.
administrative, and yeah.
Okay, so administrative being the alternative.
It's the onion.
Well,
It's
no,
got layers.
like meaning like it's literally so mundane you wouldn't care. It's not like you couldn't even argue it's political.
Okay.
but like the
how-
ATF when they
yeah.
ban something, like that's
Yeah,
Chevron
yeah.
deference.
Yeah, that could
That's
be a major
them
political
saying-
question.
Yeah,
Like
we're
bump stocks,
banning
wasn't that it?
stuff.
Wasn't that
Yeah.
the okay? And so is
Yeah,
that
no,
is that a law
were-
or just a precedent?
That was kind of like I don't know if it was Supreme Court decision or what it was before, but yeah, it was just overturned somewhat recently. So now it's just kind of up to the court to determine what the agencies mean with their policy.
My understanding of Chevron deference was the agencies came to him and said, "Hey, we can't keep coming to you every time we need to decide whether we are allowed to do this. So give us the ability to decide." And the politicians, yeah, okay, yeah, sure,
Who
go
of
ahead.
course
And
were
it's like,
getting benefits and whatnot from them.
Well, not
or just dereliction in
quite.
their duty because they didn't want to take the time because they got a birthday party to get to. Like,
It's like people are appointed their positions or get their positions in certain agencies for certain reasons, and the Supreme Court justices don't have that expertise, so they don't really interpret the policy the same way.
So the idea being the SME, the subject matter expert who is actually involved, would have a better understanding and interpretation if, and I would understand that if they were able to do so in an unbiased manner. But this comes back to why I said that everything kind of turns into politics. Everybody has their biases, and those biases show up even, especially when we're not paying attention, right? So the
right.
things,
Right.
so again, like even if it's just your simple implementation of a administrative task, there are parts and places where your personal biases are going to affect your execution of that job, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. Let me jump in on that.
yeah,
That's everybody's truth, right? Everybody has their own truth and their reality. And so I see it like where we're struggling in modern society, where this sort of forced truth of like, oh, you have to fit in this box, you have to be this type of way to exist, is what's causing a lot of the riff where it's like, oh, why aren't we accepting it? We don't have to necessarily like understand, right? But accepting and tolerating, both of those two words, right? Like just being like, oh, that's fine, like you could do what you want to do, but we still should meet on the political field, right, and have a conversation about it, not a fight, not a debate. There's times and places and spaces for that, right? But there's a need for like and that's where I think the community gardens, right, will really like create an environment for that, like where people left and right isn't enough of a definition. And I don't want to go too far with this before let me have my thought. I'll like I said, I'll talk a lot, and if other people have thoughts, I'll continue that and end it if people wanted me to. But that's about to be a whole lot if I continue it.
well, go ahead, and just know that I might jump in whenever you say something I disagree
Okay, yeah,
with.
when somebody feels like interrupting, please go ahead. So yeah, like where we meet on the like political field, right? Quite literally the field of the garden, right? Like individuals are coming together, having these like community gardens, having conversations about, oh, like what is the issue with what is the topic of the panel today, right? Like, well, okay, so some people maybe are okay with like having all their data scrubbed and completely fine with that, and it's like, okay, well, let's meet that person, talk to them in the garden, and be like, okay, well, the level, the in between there, where we make everybody happy, is having a system where you don't have to be a lawyer to understand opting into like opting into these agreeances with privacy information and all these sorts of things. Like, oh, if
We
the
all
AI is
just
giving
click it
you,
because we're going to click it, and they know we're going to
yep,
click it.
and yeah, exactly. And so like they know that, and that I feel like leaks into a bit of capitalism, which leads to my aggression towards it, right? And my reasoning for like disagreeing with the American government, and like where I'm coming from with being like, okay, well, the people who are like okay with that, who want this system, like let's meet them and be like, well, you should hear me out, right? And be like, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to be this person that has to know all these sorts of things. I want to hit opt out and know that that means I opted out, and that's the end of that. No further conversation. But
But then
we
they're
do
going to have it worked out so that every time they update you, you have to opt out again, and
exactly.
eventually you're going to miss one, and that's how they're going to get you. So
And
real
I've seen.
quick, we
Go ahead. Yeah.
well, just because this goes back to something Roddy was saying earlier about how this is all going to be information that we have at some point said yes to, right? But the thing is, we being normal human beings have a presumption of good intent, right? Like I feel like most people feel that that's that yeah, you got me there, Beach. You actually took me right out of the zone there, buddy. Made my train of thought derail. So most people assume good intent from other people. So when we say, you know what, we're just going to skip it, when EA Games says to me, hey, are you okay with us using your information, blah, 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 500 pages that I scroll past and click yes, it never occurs to me that one of those buried bylines would be, we're going to turn on your camera and record you the entire time you're playing, which we will be able to use as we see fit. Never would that ever occur to me. But it fucking could be. And every one of us clicked it without reading that sumbitch because they knew we would. And now later on down the road, when Palentir says blah blah blah, we're gonna use all of this accumulated data, literally found everywhere ever exposed. Roddy's logic is, well, I mean, you said yes to it. Yeah, that's true. But I didn't know that they were going to include me rubbing one out, watching Anakin slaying some stormtroopers. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think that was going to be a problem when I clicked, yeah, I want to play this game. So
why do? Sorry, I was just gonna say, why does that seem like such a possibility to me?
That's the government's top concern. Yeah.
No, when he said that,
I
I was like, I could totally see him doing that. That's just,
that hurts me, Roddy.
well, I mean,
And I simultaneously feel seen.
Okay, see, there you go. That's
Battlefront 2.
I was just like, I'm not gonna shame I'm not gonna ick your yum.
Yuck my yum. What'd you say, Koina?
Yeah.
Battlefront 2 is way too in right now.
Yeah,
It's visible.
I did make the EA Games reference, didn't I?
Do you remember Age of Conan is the first game to have like topless women in it?
Was it? I did not know that.
Yeah.
I thought what was it? Leisure Suit Larry was the first game I remember ever having. Well, I guess okay, because the topless women in Conan were not in a sexualized manner. Is that the difference?
Well, Age of Conan was a massive multiplayer. Leisure Suit Larry was a private, at home, on your own computer thing.
Gotcha.
And if I remember correctly, you actually had to enter the code to make them topless. They were just scantily clad if you didn't input the cheat.
By the way, there never was actually a Tomb Raider nude code. I searched.
You looked.
I looked extensively 5 years after.
Didn't exist.
Wow.
No, that's for the memes. What were you about to say?
I was gonna almost circle back to what Wrong said about, like, I hope that's the right term. I don't know.
That's fine. Either.
I've been calling them spelled, but I think wrong sounds better, and it's more
Wrong's
aggressive.
Funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna call you wrong.
But
yeah, it's really funny. Okay, go ahead.
But I just kind of disagree with the notion of, let's find a guy who thinks no privacy is okay and just have him agree with the rest of people, because I think that's just basing human dignity on what everyone else believes, or at least the majority of what people believe. And that's like a common criticism of just like unregulated democracy, of like majoritarianism. I'm definitely butchering that, but like, you are hurting a minority by just having them agree with the majority. So say it was like the other way around, and you had one person saying, I don't want my privacy taken away, and you have people who are like, I want no privacy. Now, if you try to get them in the garden and just say, agree with the rest of us, or let's make a compromise where you can have only one thing you can keep private, then I think we would look at that very differently. So we're just hoping that everyone else has a good moral standard. So
Yeah,
I
kind of.
I'm sorry,
'cause I
but
argue that we
before
can
you
educate-
respond, I just want to shout out Game Boy. That was a great usage, just as a rhetorical and debate moment. I just need to give you kudos for the use of his term with the garden. Well played. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a good comment. And so yeah, like, well, as well, like, when we talk about it, right? It's like, I'm not expecting people to, because I did say agree to disagree, right? Where it's like, you did kind of paint this sort of specific picture where it's like, oh, you have to agree to this specific standard, and I'm kind of trying to paint a reality where we educate everybody to the point where we can debate to an understanding where it is that agree to disagree, or we can truly, through the dialectic skills that we teach young people growing up, we will have that capability as a society to essentially just
Think critically.
override this. Yeah, what
Think
critical?
think critically. That's
Yeah, exactly. Critical thinking skills. Yeah, exactly. To be like, oh, okay, well, as all these problems we see with where we go, oh, well, what if somebody does this? What if somebody thinks this way? It's like if we start educating people in a better manner at a younger age to make society this place that can think critically much better, we won't run into this problem where it's like, oh, what if somebody just like acts childish and goes, I don't feel like doing this today. It's like, no, no, no. We'll have created a society where people were educated enough where they are adults where they're like, okay, look, hey, you know what? I don't feel like talking about this today. Can we come back to the garden tomorrow? Right. As where you assume as a kid, because you let children as they grow up, leave. If we're continuing with this analogy of the garden, like leave the garden and go figure it out on their own and hope that they grow up, give them the space to grow up to the attempt to hope that they reach that level of being like, I'll take responsibility, I'll be the adult here, I'll handle this situation, and I'll leave it at that. Let's go
for the record,
other stuff.
it's your
Yeah.
garden, so we're gonna be there if you want to be, buddy. So real quick,
Thank you.
as far as
But
the education thing goes, yeah, and then I'll give it right back to you, Game Boy. I heard it said once, and I don't remember who the original quote was from. Maybe it's just a common trope, but I wish that we had more teaching on how to think as opposed to teaching people what to think, right? Like teaching people to think for themselves, which is really what critical thinking actually is. When people hear the words critical thinking, they have they typically have a negative connotation these days because it's goes against groupthink. And we are in a phase of society. Well, you know what? Maybe that's not even a phase. Maybe I feel like when I was younger, groupthink was less of a thing, but maybe we all just thought that way. So it was groupthink I participated in, like counter groupthink. Whatever. The point is that I feel like nowadays, if you try to think outside the box, if you try to poke the edges of the conversation or the edges of rational thought, you try to be personally critical of your own thoughts, you get shit on aggressively for it. So we need to go back to a place where we were teaching people how to think as opposed to teaching people what to think. But then we have to trust people to be able to successfully think what they should think. But fuck, did I just do the same thing? Did I just gatekeep because I said what they should think? I mean, everybody
no, I was
thinks.
about to say, like, I hate to put you on the spot, but I think that you like because you're the one with the self-awareness talking about it in this moment, right? So like whatever your that's whatever you did is not the path for everybody else, but it's clearly like your interpretation of like what is reality at this moment for how everybody else should attempt to open up in this way, like I think is super valuable, right? And so like what do you see with your education that you think led to this attempt of this open-mindedness where you have the capability to see both almost past left and right to the points that I try to talk about as well, where they're invaluable almost. We need the circle of everybody being like, well, what are you first? What are you first? Are you a Democrat first, and then you still after that have
Pragmatist.
some Republican ideologies? Like that's totally fine. That's a way that we should live reality. Do you have anarchist, communist ideologies after that? That's fine. Go ahead, guys.
Pragmatism. So and this actually it's borderline utilitarianism, but it's ultimately pragmatism. I actually discussed this on Sunday, so I'm not going to rehash it because I'm sure that there were some people who heard it then, and I don't want to repeat myself too much. But as far as my education, so everybody knows I'm a high school dropout. Like I'm a college dropout. Like school does not fit me and never has. But for my entire youth, for the first 8 years of my 9 years of my education, I was in gifted and talented programs. And in the course of that, my youth was literally, I was trained on how to solve problems. That's literally all that time was sitting in a little room with other kids that had IIQs, and we solved puzzles. We did word programs. We did words like any kind of puzzles and problem solving. That was all we fucking did in there. And I did that, like I said, from preschool through 7th grade. And we moved moved to a different state and they didn't have this program anymore. But they don't just they taught us brainstorming concepts. There is no such thing as a bad idea because every bad idea can create a good idea. Every good idea comes from a spark. It comes from some sort of a revelation. And you never know where that inspiration is going to come from. So every idea is valid. I don't care who said the thing, as long as you said the thing, and all of us got to benefit from you saying the thing. Take all the fucking credit. I don't care. We got the thing. That's what matters. We solved the problem. So, to answer your question, I'm entirely motivated by fucking fixing the problems. I don't want to sit here and bitch about it. I want to get it fucking fixed so we can go play video games, right? I want to go paint miniatures. Let's figure it out. Why the fuck haven't we figured it out yet? There's been enough smart people, and I've figured out the answer. This has been my 3-year journey. I figured out the answer. It's really because we suck, because there's always going to be shitty human beings involved. And I don't think that there's any way that we're ever going to actually be able to meet. There's ways that I've figured out that we could probably solve it. Yes, but like I said, teaching, no, it's okay. Teaching people to think in a problem-solving manner. Mm-hmm. But that also means that most people will take that or interpret that to mean utilitarianism at the expense of humanity. Right? So in other words, no, if the answer turns out to be grinding up poor people and turning them into a Soylent Green, no, that's not cool. We're past that kind of shit, right? Are we? We still throw rocks at each other. They're just rocks that go boom now. Like, have we really fucking grown at all? So if we haven't yet, are we ever gonna? Like, what could possibly unite us? Oh, wait, holla back Ronnie Reagan, the aliens. The UFOs, the UAPs, that's the only thing that's ever going to unite humanity as humanity. And even then, I'm not sure that it would work. But it's the only thing. A global threat might do it, but it might also be setting fire under the cage of roaches. And it might just be that...
Watchmen.
Yeah.
Dr. Manhattan, it's lightweight. It's hard to... I mean, you could look at him like an alien force, though. He took that, right? Like, where he was like, oh, let everybody believe that it was me that blew up New York City, even though it wasn't, so that they can collectively come together, unite
to fight. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how American everybody was on 9/12? Like, that was one of the most united in my lifetime. That's the most united I've seen in the United States. It was on the 12th of September, 2001. Everybody was pulled together.
Crisis go to waste.
And again, how many times have you all heard me? I literally was just railing about this last week. So again, I'm not going to do it again. But how many times just in recent past have we seen unifying populist moments that get immediately shit on by somebody? Who's the they, Roddy? Who's the they?
Yep.
We don't know. There's somebody, there's a they that is keeping us fucking at each other's throats. There is a they that does not want these problems solved. I'm convinced now that it's people like Peter Thiel. They are the they. Peter Thiel and his ilk, Elon Musk, is amongst them. And again, so is J.D. Vance, so you know, Roddy. You don't know anything about J.D. Vance's politics? Look into it. He's an anarcho-capitalist, heavy tech bro.
No, he's not. He's Curtis Yarvin.
Curtis Yarvin, yes.
Reaction.
Yes,
But
he is Curtis Yarvin.
Curtis Yarvin is not a part of the anarcho-capitalist. He springs off from them. He's post-libertarian.
Okay, like I say, he's a burn it all motherfucker.
It depends on your definition.
Sure, he's a burn it all. You're still against burn it all, right, Roddy?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely against burn it all.
So am I. That's the dumbest fucking answer.
Yeah.
We're not
By
going
the
to
way,
set
I'd like
fire to the
to
house
point
we're
out we
living
just
in.
crossed the 2.5 hour mark, and I think it's time to get spicy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What are we getting spicy with? What do you mean? I mean, I haven't seen that in a hot minute, bro.
You turned off the music.
Oh no, it's on. You just can't hear
Is it? Okay.
All right. Thank you for that, Roddy.
Yep.
I am. Do you mind if I speak on that?
No, bro, go. Let me hear it.
When I agree that it would be ideal if everyone can come to an agreement and educate those who we would collectively see as wrong, but I think originally it was kind of dodgy, but I think it not should be what everyone else believes. It shouldn't be a moral indicator of what we educate people, but rather we should educate them on what should be done and how we should learn those informations based off certain particulars. So like whenever we look at like philosophical history, it wasn't just okay, let's appeal to the majority of people, but oftentimes the opposite of this is what the majority of people believe. This is how I here's how I in contrast view it. Like Plato during his time, he was against the pagans. Aristotle was against the people who believed in Plato. And then you got many of the liberals. They were against the divine right people. I think it should be how do we look at these issues and what are we appealing to when we make that view? So I think there should be a standard view of like how that should be made. And even if you don't believe there's a higher objective truth to that, I think when we teach people how to live in society, I think we should accept certain objective norms on how we communicate. I think one of the biggest divisive issues is what norms we're talking about. Because sometimes someone's talking from a spiritual level of this is what God has done on this issue, and then someone might just be talking from like a hedonistic one, and it just doesn't correlate that well because someone's talking about what you should be doing, and the other one's talking about what's I'm allowed to be doing, and you can't have a communication in society. Now, like if we're talking about how to unite people, it's not good at all if you just reject what we should be doing by any objective basis. I mean,
Okay, hang
many
on, because this is something that you were kind of tickling on in the Discord channel, and I just kind of want to engage you on it. I didn't really pick at it, the scab, whenever we were in the chat. But do you believe that we can have a should-be conversation that doesn't involve God?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like what you're
Yeah.
saying too.
You agree that religion and or belief in a higher power and the teachings of whatever church you personally ascribe to is not the only source of ethics and morality?
I think God, like many things, is an answer to a lot of questions and unites reality under one concept. Like, so I could pick apart, like, oh, how can you have math without God? How can you have ethics without God? But I acknowledge that there are people who have come to their own conclusions. My only argument with Chief was I felt that he based his reality on a more arbitrary basis. Not to say that's wrong or inherently illogical. I'm just saying it's arbitrary, and I don't think you can judge God on a moral basis if you hold to morals developed by society.
So
That was all I was saying.
just to make sure that we're having the same conversation, in your words, can you define the difference between hedonism and humanism?
Yeah, I would say that humanism often comes with a moral stance that goes beyond what is good for me and what satisfaction I get from me. Humanism is what is good for me and others.
So humanism is good for the group, hedonism is what's good for me. Do you think that all hedonism is what's good for me? Because, excuse me, my understanding is that hedonism, and this is why I'm asking, I thought that hedonism was just specifically what feels good.
No, hedonism
Is just self-interest.
Hedonism isn't pure pleasure. The guy who came up with it, I forgot his name, didn't
Was it not
actually think.
hedon?
No.
Okay.
But hedon is like the
There's
Greek
like a
word for
Greek god
joy.
or something. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
The Greek
something.
word for pleasure.
Pleasure. There you
Yes.
go. So yeah,
But-
hedonism is specifically about pleasure. That's what I thought. Thank you, Rowdy. Appreciate the check
Right.
there.
It's not about physical pleasure, but rather
Self-satisfaction.
mental and emotional pleasure. Yes. So you can do something for the rest of the group by saying it provides me personal satisfaction, while the humanist might argue I'm doing it for the rest of the group because it's good for everyone's personal satisfaction, similar to utilitarianism. So there is the difference. It's just human-based ethics.
The question I would have is, knowing how Radish thinks, isn't that pleasure the group thinking well of that person that's driving them to think that.
That's why a hedonist would say you would do any good act, but the humanist would say that there's some, like many humanists who developed the idea were like in the Reformation Christians. So they thought
Okay.
doing it, like, you have human based ethics, and the reason you're doing it for the rest of humanity is because God told you that humans are born with some natural kind of um some natural value and intrinsic worth, but whenever you judge ethics, it should be from a group and human understanding
I thought,
rather
and
than
correct me if I'm wrong, since because I'm okay with the fact that we've kind of taken a religious left here, or I guess a religious right. But I was of the impression that humanism was counter to theism, insofar as,
No.
according to most Judeo-Christian teachings, that you put God above your fellow man. Your fellow man comes second to God. God's job is to take care of your fellow man. That's not your problem.
So humanism is in contrast to theocentrism. I hold to that belief because I think that there is an abstract good, and that abstract good is God, while humanists believe that the good that you try to do as a person is not trying to be like God or imitate God, like I think Chief mentioned as well, but rather do what is good for people because that's what God tells you. Like any human-based ethics should be like that, instead of human-based ethics should be to try to achieve God.
So the reason that I'm pushing on this button is for full disclosure. I personally would consider myself an agnostic. I believe that there probably is something out there, but it's not what you think it is, and it's certainly not what's written in any of the books that we have. And I think that in fact it's inherently arrogant and pompous for us to think that we as a human would be able to actually conceptualize or understand anything that an actual deity, omniscient, omnipotent deity, would be able to conceive of. So the very idea that we would know the mind of God is inherently arrogant and ridiculous to me. So that said, I believe that there's probably something. I don't know what it is, and I think it's probably more likely some sort of an energy or something that's science at the end of the day. All the woo-woo is just science we don't understand, because that's the way it's been throughout all of history. We eventually learn what the science behind the woo-woo was, and then it's just called science, right? So I think that eventually science is my religion at the end of the day. Any definition that you offer for your religious beliefs or your religion, I would be able to apply one-to-one to my trust and faith in science, right? Now, including the rituals involved, right? So that said, I believe personally that I am able to, through this is why my humanism, back to what I was saying, the problem solving, the borderline utilitarianism, it's just that in my mind it makes the most sense for everybody to do well. My life will be inherently better. The rising tide all boats thing, I actually believe that theoretically that is true, and that if Roddy is doing better, it's more likely that that's going to splash onto me. If Koina is doing better, it's going to help me do better too. That if all of us are doing better, that is inherently better for all of us. So with that said, my morality is based on that. My ethics are based on that. I believe that we don't need to have a book written a few thousand years ago tell us that killing folks is bad, but overlook the fact that raping folks isn't. Like, that seems to me like an oversight that shows a lack of foresight. And anything that's supposed to be omnipotent and omniscient would be giving us answers to problems that we're going to have later, not just the problems that we have right now. Not to mention the fact that anything written at the time, which was allegedly the word of God through the hand of man, or through the mouths of man, through the pens of man, right, is going to go through man as a filter. So it seems inherently obvious and logical that that filter is going to affect the message. So even if we give the idea that a deity did in fact whisper into John Paul, Ringo, and the rest of them, that this is what my will is, that when they're writing it down, they're not going to, and you know what I'm thinking, that it's not going to, that their bias isn't going to directly influence the word of God. And so again, like I said, there's a lot of questions in there. I think from a utilitarian perspective that all of us doing better is good. I don't need God to tell me that. Do you agree that that's possible? And is that still moral? Is that still okay? Am I a bad
So-
person because I'm only doing it because ultimately it benefits me too? That's kind of what you were talking about, right, Roddy? Insofar as my thinking.
Yeah, that's
I took the punt and I wanted to explain. So
no, you're good.
So you kind of ranted there, and if you
I
mind,
do
I
that.
might as well.
take it all.
So I'll give you some background. I agree with you in some sense, but I came to a different conclusion.
Lay it
I
on me.
fell out of Christianity and then rejoined it in part because I held to some form of deism. The thought that there is a God out there because there somehow has to be. And I was just unsure because I thought it was egotistical to understand what kind of God that would be. So I am sympathetic to that idea because I do think that, in one sense, like you said, I think it's better if everyone does good for it to have a splash onto me. One thing I was unsure of is what does it mean to have good? And so I thought that I gradually developed this idea that there has to be some abstract good separate from life and
Group
your life.
happiness.
Well, it doesn't have to be that, because if group happiness is really the determination of what is good, then any sense of the word, Aztecs, if they were slaughtering one guy, it made the whole group happy, but like, look at that one guy, he's dead on the floor. I wouldn't consider that good. So why do I think that's not good?
Do you not believe that that happens literally today? That happens
it
inherently
does,
in every
and it's
society?
wrong. And it's wrong. So why do I consider that wrong? And like, what moral standard am I coming to? So I think that there has
So real quick,
be
the goods of the
something
goods of the many never outweigh the goods or the needs of the few to you.
not unless it's doing bad. Like, I do hold to an idea that there are needs of the many that should come to some priority. But when we look at the needs of the many, if that comes at the expense of some sort of dignity or order, I don't think it would be ideal to hop to that conclusion. But I I do think that whenever we do look at a concept like deism or such, we are coming to this conception of, so God just doesn't care. That's even worse, because if God just made the earth and then just doesn't affect it at all, what's the
And then God
purpose behind
shrugged.
the earth? Yeah, God just like, oh, I don't know. So I think that there was some purpose involved in the earth that we have to
We're an ant farm at
substantiate.
best.
I don't think that's logical.
Because, okay, well, hold on. Do you think it's any more logical what the actual book says, which is that we literally exist to worship him and that is our sole purpose? We exist literally to give him worship. That makes more sense to you?
Well, I think it makes more sense than the idea that we just live passively.
That means we're
Don't
literally
have-
here for his entertainment, Game Boy.
Well, under a deist God, there wouldn't even be a form of understanding of what he is, because he didn't.
The fact that we keep even calling it a he.
Yeah, exactly. You just have a thing. You have a sheet. You have something that doesn't bother with the world.
That's
At least
called an
with the
it.
Christian.
That's literally what I said earlier. It's some sort of an uncomprehensible amorphous energy source that was what was before there is what is, that we will literally never be able to conceptualize because it exists in a subquantum. Yeah, probably. It's science. It's not woo-woo, but it's something that we don't understand.
God is non-binary.
Do
Have
you
you tried that?
believe yeah, it was the first non-binary, right? Do you believe I am that is? Do you believe that we can fuck, I am that is threw me off. Never mind. God damn it. It derailed. It's been a long time since this happened. Fuck. Go ahead.
Well, I'll answer just because
I had a really good question too.
I think that if you believe in such a God, he has to be the greatest possible being.
It.
I say he because I believe in a he. That's the
Why?
only reason I'm doing that. Well, I was getting to that. I think it has to be the greatest possible being out there. And with that comes logic. if you have a God that does not create the universe with some purpose in it, then what's the point? And I think that when we look at it, there's no logical basis for purpose in this universe if God doesn't have some form of interaction with it. And, and that could be as minimal as just allowing himself to be visible for worship. And it doesn't even have to be in the biblical perspective. Just the idea of there's indications of a God in the universe that people are naturally inclined to. That could be a Christian idea of grace that we slowly come into this perception
Define
of faith
grace
through
for me.
grace.
What do you mean by your word grace when you use that word? What does that mean to you?
So there's, oh shit, that's complicated.
I know.
Trying to,
I tend to
because
ask complicated questions, homie.
No, it's not. I don't. Grace in the idea that you're more open to God, if that makes sense.
So receptibility is to you what grace means. The ability to
Not,
receive God.
I guess. I'm trying to. That doesn't sound right, but that does make sense. Like, you only come to faith through grace because you are more susceptible to God, baptism, the Eucharist, etc. Um, yeah, I think that would make sense.
Okay.
Receptibility to God. I don't really want to say that. Yeah.
No worries. So I actually am going to bring this back now, okay? Because what we just did was we just both got on Palentir's radar, okay? This is true, by the way. This is you and I just took stances. I just said things and you just said things that, depending on who's looking into our social media, that could definitely negatively affect us, right? Me talking about or questioning the Judeo-Christian beliefs, especially in the current climate, with what's going on in Israel and all of that jazz, I could potentially be putting myself up for some sort of repercussions, some sort of consequences, right? Even if I don't know if it turns out that my employer is a Christian and they are angry that I'm not as devoted as them. They never thought about it, but since I said it publicly, well, fuck, it's open access now, right? And so they have the access. Right now, it's just the government, right? But again, we know that the door creaks open, but it doesn't usually shut. So we know that right now it's just going to be the government who has access to the information databases that Palantir are. But if Palantir is owned by an independent company, and if we have a capitalist in chief right now, CEO running the country, why would he not be like, yeah, Palantir, I'll tell you what, instead of us paying you, how about we let you have the services, you just let us use it. We'll give you the information quid pro quo to use as you like. That's literally how it happens. That's why we all get the spam calls, right? So how long before your employer is able to say, oh shit, I'm not sure that I feel comfortable with this like trad fundamentalist Christian, like they've been shooting people up lately, and so your employer's like, I can't, I'm sorry there, Game Boy, you can't work here anymore. This is why. This is the fear. Even though, like I said, I don't break laws. Like I'm a fucking Boy Scout. Like I do my best to stay as within the. I color in the lines as much as I can, because that's the way I was raised. Again, military family. But I'm also gonna always push the boundaries. And so that said, when the boundaries move, and I find myself standing on the other side of it now, fuck, whoops. Right? But this shit lives forever now. And now all of a sudden, if that Overton window closes behind me, I'm now unemployable. So again, Roddy, do you still shrug your shoulders? Do you still? Go ahead, Game Boy. Yeah,
like we went on a rant.
We did. That's why I was punting it over to Roddy.
But I was actually going to get to another point before we
derailed. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The Christian part. What I was going to say actually was I think that we should the part about education for some purpose or some good. My point wasn't even going to be, well, it should be a Christian good, but rather it should be that we acknowledge dignity. And I think that's the only basis for political society, is that we understand what it means to respect other people's dignity and what we should enforce when that is violated. So if we can't acknowledge that we as people have certain dignities and, I'm going to use the term, rights, then I don't think it should be the basis of argument if we can't first acknowledge, like, hey, I don't think we should kill this person, or I don't think we should enslave this person, or I don't think we should. And then it gets on to the more complicated: take away their guns, take away some sort of speech, take away their ability to walk where they please. I think it just gets to a point of we should be arguing on what dignities people have before we get to what laws we should enforce against the violations of those dignities, etc. And I think
Word.
that should be the basis of the should.
I can dig it. So now I'm going to go ahead and back to punting it over to Roddy. Has your position or concern regarding this changed? I asked you this earlier, but I don't know that I actually got you to or I think that you didn't answer for some reason. I don't remember why you didn't answer. But now that we've kind of poked at the corners here and we've kind of laid all this out, has your perspective changed? Do you see
No,
the potential
because
concerns for yourself now? Is this flashing on your
I can see
boots?
the concerns, but just like with anything, you can sit there and come up with 20 ways of how it's going to go bad and why it could go bad and what could happen, but until we see some evidence of that being the case, what do you do? Like, are we to the point
what do
where
you
we
do
can
when you
decide
do
what
see it?
pre-crime
That's what we
is?
do now.
Yeah,
Well,
what
then
do
you
you do?
address it.
So that we can address it before it happens in the future, right? Because we want to avoid these problems headed into the future.
Okay, so there's ways you can try and avoid it, but at this point, if this becomes law and they pass it, then it would behoove us to find some people who can monitor what's happening, maybe create some form of, because we do have freedom of information and whatnot.
So
So
far.
if we can monitor, well, sure, but again, until we develop the ability to have pre-crime cognition, we try and set rules, laws, regulations. You know, these things are to help us function as a group. And if people are going to say, well, we need to have these systems tied together better so that our law enforcement and our other government agents can work well together and not have 10 different systems where we have to go try and gather information from. Okay, fine. I mean,
I think redundancy is important. Sorry to interrupt your thought there. I
no,
want you to
no,
keep
that's
going, but
yeah. The redundancy is one way of looking at it. I'm sure there's some people that pushed for it with that in mind, but it's like
I hear your concerns.
saying that the ability for them to use this for evil is like saying cell phones are going to rot the brains of all humanity until we're Wall-E.
And isn't that what you
Sure.
said? Like,
well, that's my point. Sure, and it's up to us to make sure as this is progressing, we keep an eye on that and do what we can to mitigate that from becoming the reality. Because whether they do it in the open or not, we already know the black budgets and the things these people are doing, which is far more concerning to me, is that they can do this stuff without us being aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
And possibly already have. If you look at the Patriot Act, that was one of the concerns with that. So technically, I'm actually surprised because of the Patriot Act, they don't already have that system in play.
Roddy, do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Regardless of if they're already doing it or what the consequences might be, do you think they should be doing it?
No, I think they should be focusing on actually fixing the issues. There are 50 broken things that I personally, were I president, would be focusing.
Okay,
I was going to say,
think that's fair.
You said if you were president, they is we, they is us, right? We the people. We keep saying they and it and talking about the government and these things, but it's us. It's us here talking about it now, right? So we're here to talk about how we see these things going down and why we think they should be different, right? And so if you have issues with these things and you voted for this, like I think you're well within your area to
Okay,
go,
this would be 20th on my list of shit to fix. How about that?
But here's the
Okay.
thing, and this is my pushback there, Roddy, and this has been my pushback and why I've been as irritated and frustrated with you as I have been of late. Because it's not just that this is number 20 of the things you would be concerned you would try to fix. It's more that I remember talking to you 3 years ago and knowing that these were things that were in your top 3 of things that were deal breakers for you. These were the things that you complained about, such as privacy invasions, over controlling government. And I actually want to bring this back. And I know I said earlier I wasn't making you or holding your feet to the fire about Trump, but since we're kind of towards closing, and I feel like we've gotten through most of the chewy parts without my AI guys, it's difficult for me to pursue the other questions and lines of thinking I wanted to without a whole lot of Googling. So I'm going to ask you questions about your position with Trump still. I understand, by the way, I'm going to put the caveat that you've made it clear that you have not been closely following politics of late because of in-life distractions. Completely get it. That's fine. Cool. Moving past that. So I assume that you know about the big, beautiful bill, right? You know about this and the fact that a lot of shit that was in there directly relates to the AI. It also is, instead of cutting spending, it's increasing spending with no clear-cut way of balancing a deficit. Like, even if all of the other endowments and spending was cut, my understanding, somebody who actually knows what all of these fund numbers here to my left, where the fuck did it go? These fund numbers mean, right? But my understanding is that even if we got rid of all of the rest of the spending, it still would not be enough to cover the spending that Trump is increasing by right now. So, given the fact that, number one, he is increasing the deficit, he is increasing government spending, he is increasing government intervention in your daily life, and he has absolutely made it clear that he is willing to. He's doing a big bill with a bunch of stuff hidden in it, knowing that it's going to get stuff through. All of these used to be things that you said that is unacceptable. I do not support a politician who would do these things. I've asked you before your line in the sand, and you told me that it was if he tries to run for office again, that will be your hard line in the sand. Is that still the only line in the sand for you, Roddy? Or at this point, is there other things? Thank you for that. Wrong. Are there other things here that are still your line in the sand? Like I said, they used to be your line in the sand, man. I heard you and I still have the fucking raws. I'll show you. Have you changed and opened up and been like...
Would like to see the raws, but again, I'm against the use of these 4,000 page bills. I don't know how big it is.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard the term big, beautiful bill. Knowing what I know about Trump and why I voted for him, I will give him the benefit of the doubt that there is a reason for it. But I'm highly suspect because knowing how these people write these bills, it's never the politicians. It's always these groups, committees, and other people that are doing it. It seems like more of the same. So, yeah, I'm against that stuff. I want single bill issues being voted on so that people can read it and you don't have politicians hiding behind the fact, Well, I didn't want to vote for the big, beautiful bill because of these 4 things that you're all pissed off about me. But look, I bought 5,000 jobs back to, Joey Bag of Donutsville because we're getting a new Amazon plant.
So just so you know, and this is kind of sort of related, and shout out to Koina because this is a talking point that I have not actually corroborated yet. I planned to look it up later, but I haven't had the fucking chance. I literally got off work, ate some pizza, and sat down with y'all. But an example of what you're talking about is apparently they just tied 2 things in the same bill where it was something about denouncing the Colorado attack, the Colorado hate attack, was tied somehow with using the phrase "Free Palestine" being considered an anti-Semitic phrase. I haven't, like I said, I haven't looked into it yet, but like those 2 things.
See, that seems ridiculous.
That seems like a slimy thing to put in the same bill together because, like you said, when later on somebody's like, "Oh, well, you were okay with the no, bro, it was that other thing that I didn't like that I voted against, right?"
Yeah,
but the alternative here is, and this is what's actually happening in this particular case. Marjorie Taylor Greene, as an example, one of the biggest Trump loyalists, is actually talking out about this big, beautiful bill that she signed because she, like you, gave Trump the benefit of the doubt, and she didn't actually read all 50,000 pages. How many of anybody remember how many pages it is? Fucking, it's a lot. It's like 1,500, real talk, I think, but I could be wrong. But I didn't read all of it, and now she's finding out that included in it is a restriction prohibiting states from being able to create any laws regulating artificial intelligence. That's not cool.
For how long?
I think it's 10 years, I think, for the next 10 years. So, and she's like, I never would have fucking signed for that. That is not cool. That is not acceptable. I am not okay with that. And the fact that that's cooked in it directly ties into the video clip I was talking about. Spelt this, if you would do, see, I can't call you wrong, man. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right because you're wrong.
I know,
Whatever.
I'm right all the
I
time.
can't do
I know,
it.
it's hard.
Oh, now you did it. Now you did it. Now it's gonna feel. Now it's
Now
gonna
he's
feel
gonna
just
call you
fine.
wrong.
It's gonna be okay.
You're
Thank
so
you for that.
wrong.
It's funny if you called me wrong.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. You fixed it. All right. So back to it. If you wouldn't mind, if you go to the bullshitting, just because I suck at this, if you go to the bullshitting channel and copy paste that dark gothic MAGA or whatever, and drop the link into the chat, just so people can see what I'm talking about, and you can watch it on your own time. I actually did watch it on stream. This was, like I said, this was 8 months, 10 months ago, something like that. It was while Trump was still running for office. If you, when I watched it, it was just like a few days old or maybe a week or 2 old. So however old it is minus that. But like I said, it ties directly into what we're talking about here. AI in that big, beautiful bill that you're willing to shrug your shoulders and give Trump the benefit of the doubt, and that Trump keeps talking about how it's this amazing thing and it's the best thing, that the best bill there ever was, because that's all that Trump ever deals with, that it actually includes provisions that are going to help support these tech oligarchs in their systemic or systematic, which one is it? Well, I guess both, in their dismantling of the United States. Like, and it was predicted by this video months ago, and lo and behold, here we go. Grab your ankles.
With Elon as the thumbnail there.
Yes, that's the one.
Just to make sure that I got it right.
Yep,
okay,
that's
cool.
the one.
Silicon Valley political agenda.
You got
dark,
it. Dark Gothic MAGA.
Okay, cool,
you
cool.
got it. That's the one.
How
Like I
tech
said, I
those
highly recommend everybody watch it. Super great video. And again, I've watched it twice now because it was absolutely spot on the nose. And I've done my due diligence. I've cross-referenced. I've looked up those names. Oh yeah, that really is that person. Oh fuck, that person really did say that thing. And there's plenty of quotes and videos of them saying the things. They're fucking saying it out loud. What was his name again? Sam, what? Fucking Wiener. What?
You mentioned a couple names. I wrote some down as I was looking this stuff up. I had Joe Lansdale, Stephen Cohen, Alex Kark is the CEO, Peter Thiel. Those are the names I had written down. I wasn't sure
no, the guy who the JD Vance. Who? What did you say earlier, Game Boy? What's the name of the guy name that JD Vance follows?
Curtis Yarvin and
Yarvin.
Nick Land.
Thank you, Curtis Yarvin. That's the big one to look up. That's the guy who
Greek politician?
no, they're
Yarvin?
oligarchs.
He's American.
Curtis Yarvin.
Neo-reactionary is the one you want to look up. Or
Okay,
Mencius Bullbug, but I don't.
Yarvin was this familiar name. Okay, Curtis Yarvin. All right, thank you.
Yeah, word. So, and you can drop that link in the chat as well if you don't mind. Like if you got his Wikipedia page, just so people know who I'm talking about here. Normally I do.
If you
this.
have that one, you want me to look it up?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, again, like I said, that's the whole thing. That was what we were talking about. I can't copy paste.
Wrong link. Correct me. I was gonna say I can post it if it's the wrong link. You can correct me. Game
The
Boy.
wrong link.
Yep.
What were you about to say, Game Boy?
I have like a few of his writings pulled up from when I read it last. If you want me to also.
Sure. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Slam it in there. Slam it in there.
They're books, so.
Push it all the way into the chat. Yeah. So again, this guy
right?
Curtis Yarvin.
Okay.
Say what? What was that, Roddy?
I do not consent.
Wiki there. Oh, sorry.
Sure. Show me on the vape where the bad man touched you. So I had to
no
say,
bad man has touched me.
I had to say it while it was in your mouth. I'm sorry. So this Curtis Yarvin dude is the devil, basically. And I know this is going to make me sound bad and it's going to make me look bad. That's fine. He literally does look like the guy who got punked and bullied in high school and grew up twisting his mustache saying, I'm going to get you someday. So again, take from that what you will, but tell me I'm wrong. This is the guy that couldn't get a date and is now punishing the world for it.
I'm looking at his wiki picture. I'm not too judgmental, but
it screams
I
incel.
trust your assessment.
Yeah.
So I actually
Of
spent,
character.
I spent 4 to 5 months on a deep dive with a man. I still wouldn't say I have a proper grasp, but he isn't exactly necessarily as bad as I would say he's painted, but he's really bad. He came up with the idea of red pill.
Yeah, he was the guy who coined that phrase. Correct.
But he's not who you want influencing the
leader of the
electorate,
Western world.
But he himself doesn't like the fact that these people are ruling the country, if that gives you an idea. So I don't think it's a perfect.
And that's the problem. That's why he's the fucking devil, my dude, is because if you believe in that sort of thing, the devil is the sweet talker, right? He's the one who says all of the things that you want to hear and that you're like, yeah, and gets you nodding. And then he slips that one finger in, right? And that's how it starts. So again, that's literally who this guy. Really? No, because again, what you were just saying, like he starts playing the song and dance that Roddy and I both will hum along to about how the government is misbehaving. We can no longer trust the government. We know that things need to be fixed. We know that it is no longer we the people. So if we are in a post democratic society already, let's go ahead and figure it out and let's find the next step. This is the big experiment. What's the next stage in the experiment? The thing is, the answer he comes up with is not one that Roddy and I are going to be like, yeah, that's the one, guy. So again, like we can resonate with a lot of his perspectives, positions, his points, but his solutions, that's we can't fucking jam with. So that's why I say, because he sweet talks you into thinking, nodding along and being like, yeah, I feel what this guy's saying. Oh, gee, golly, is that what we have to do? The non-critical thinkers are just going to keep following his yes and logic, right? This is rhetoric 101. They're just going to keep following his yes and logic, and that 50% or lower that George Carlin warned us about, those people are just going to keep smiling and nodding. So that's how we're doomed. That's what the Antichrist is supposed to do, right, Game Boy?
Well, there's not
I'm in
one.
agreement with Radish.
But
cheers.
I'm so not that I'm saying that he has good reasoning, but I would say that his criticisms are valid.
He correctly diagnoses the problem. He just doesn't offer the correct solution.
I don't think he does, but that's my own perspective.
Oh, really?
How does he have influence then?
I disagree heavily with him on a fundamental level, but I would say that his position that he comes out with, and that of which he reasons to get there, aren't the same as we would see in Peter Thiel or JD Vance. Because JD Vance and Peter Thiel have both said, we agree with you, but we don't agree with you, in some sense of the word. They are for his corporations ruling the government, but they are shy of monarchy, anti-democracy, and that stuff. So they miss his point. His point was not corporations don't have enough power. It's that corporations have a good form of taking care of people, and therefore they should be the sole government. Which
I
is
was
a
about to say
different
you
concept.
said thank you. I was about to make that distinction. You were saying that he believes that the corporations should run the government, but no, the government he believes that the corporations should be the government. And
It is
that
corporate
great
monarchy.
men should lead through their earned privilege. Does that sound like
Which
something
is-
you'd support, Roddy?
My chat's freaking out.
Yeah, no,
We're not
that's
fans of Great Man Theory.
No, me either.
well,
Sounds pretty shitty, right?
it does, but let's look at it in a business sense.
Do it. Go ahead.
Well,
That's
because
what they're
again,
doing.
it's
Yeah.
well, that's what they're doing. So they're saying, okay, do we want to let the janitor run the company, or do we want somebody who's taken economics and these other things? Like, yeah, we can certainly say this is the beginning of the end. Or it could be, look, we need to get the smartest people in the room in here to figure out how to fix this. So, yes, while we can certainly say it sounds very dystopian, you can make almost anything somebody says sound bad, especially if you're the type of person that just wants to paint. Everything anybody says is bad if it doesn't ascribe to your statements. So, like,
So okay, so I haven't heard from Koina in a while, and I'd love to hear that sweet dulcet voice of his. Do you think what he's talking about there, Koina, is that this? Because I feel like it was you who talked about the extreme versions of things. It might have been somebody else who was talking about this in chat, but basically that anything taken to an extreme is bad, but that doesn't mean that you rule out the middle that's good. Does that sound like something you were talking about?
I don't think that was me. Were you talking about like the horseshoe theory with like the more extreme people get, the more easy
Yes.
they like justify authoritarianism?
That could very well be what I'm thinking of. So do you believe that no matter what good we solve, it will inevitably unwind into the extreme worst version of itself?
I don't think so.
No? You think that there's a way for us to be, or do you think that we just have to constantly be doing this through checks and balances?
Yeah.
Okay. Because what you're talking about, Roddy, like I agree with in concept, but I feel like it's going to be taken to an extreme, right? All of those things, when either direction, right? Either what we're comfortable with always ends up getting used against us. It always ends up being taken to an extreme that we weren't prepared for when we agreed to the thing. Again, circling back to I clicked yes to play Battlefront, and I didn't actually read the fine print.
right.
We don't assume it's going to be taken to the extremes, but we know that it will be. We've proven that it will be. It demonstrably is, but we just keep doing it anyway. I mean, is that not the same thing? I don't know. Maybe I've lost the thread.
Well, and again, so not knowing anything about this guy, the first thing I generally look at is like this person is a far right political blogger, software developer, anti-egalitarian.
Do you guys want me to just summarize so we don't
Yeah,
rely on the wiki?
Sure. Yeah, well, because you've read a lot. Well, I tell you what, let Roddy finish what he's saying, and then I'll hear
Yeah.
your summary. How about that? Go ahead, keep Roddy.
Okay, so usually what happens when I start looking at people is I look if they're married and have children.
Does he?
He is married. Uh, he was married to one spouse up until 2021, who she died of a rare genetic disease, and he's now remarried and has 3 children. So he has a legacy. He has kids, and so I don't know that he's necessarily a burn it all down. And then the second thing I look at is if the person has some sort of spiritual grounding. And apparently he's an atheist and part of the anarcho-capitalist system. So that causes me to have a flag go up immediate.
So how about the literal words that come out of his mouth? Like, go
Well,
do
I
me a favor.
haven't listened
Yep,
to
no,
him.
I know. That's what I was about to say. And
Yeah.
if you when you watch that video, you will. But somebody just pull up a few like of his quotes, some Curtis Yarvin quotes, please. Like, let's go to you, Game Boy, because again, you'll probably be able to quicker find the most meaningful quotes that summarize his positions. Give us your filtered summary.
So Curtis Yarvin, he split from the anarcho-capitalist kind of perspective, where he used to be very strongly like there was this guy named Hoppe who had this belief that democracy was bad because of it prioritized staying in office and it often prioritized not focusing on the debt but prioritizing your means quickly
I
and
agree with all
most
that.
effective. So he said that we should move towards he had already an inclination towards anarchy and capitalism. So he
Instead
said
of
that we should
publicly funded system. But okay, cool, go on.
so he said that you should voluntarily join little small cities owned by business, not business owners, but one single property owner, like a monarchy. Curtis Yarvin split from that perspective, and he had a more in-depth understanding of the reactionary movement and a more susceptible understanding of democracy, where he criticized democracy more for being more fluid and rather less rigid. And he also criticized the anarcho capitalists for this. And he said that since you have a voluntary quote unquote state, you don't really have a rigid lines where you should maintain the aggression and you should maintain the small city states owned by corporations, but they should be more explicitly monarchies. And by that token, he was very influenced by the great man theory. And I forgot who it was, but there was a guy in Russia who had the idea of Camerism. He was a new neo-Camerist, and he believed that we should go back to the before Russia time, and we should totally disregard the Enlightenment ideas that Hoppe believed in, like liberty and inequality is super good, but it shouldn't be because people naturally come to that position, but because that's just the natural order. And I just disagree with all of that, and I'm more pro Enlightenment. But uh, I think that was basically it. I think he also had this idea of like restoring the nation, but it shouldn't be through elected officials, but rather corporations who just take over Congress and the executive branch rather than people in Congress and people in the executive branch being more susceptible to corporations like J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel later spend it.
So there you go. Did you did you find any good quotes? I saw I saw you dropped like 3 quotes, but most of those are too long, and I don't want to. You know what? Fuck it. I'll read
I
at
just
least the
dropped
first
a
one.
general link.
Yeah.
I could flip through. Yeah, I could flip through and see if I can find a shorter one.
Right. Or
The
again.
4 horsemen of cultural apocalypse are fake, gay, cringe, and oh my gosh,
I don't even
the R
understand what
word.
that
Never
means.
mind.
I don't even understand what that
I'm
one
not
means.
a fan of this person. Yeah, some bad quotes here.
Yeah. Like you said,
Gosh, that was awful. I disagree with Curtis Yarvin. In my personal opinion and takes there. I'll end that with that.
So okay. back to it. Curtis Yarvin is he is Palpatine to JD Vance's Vader. Okay, so he is the primary influencer of JD Vance's political foundations. I'm sure that just like Game Boy says there's some daylight between the two and that they're not necessarily identical, but either way, his general stance is that we need to burn it all. He came to, again, like I said, I stopped you, I interrupted just briefly, says like a placeholder there, Game Boy, because you had me at first, like I said, and then you turned a corner. And it's like, well, that's not the solution. There are other, better, smarter ways to take political or money, financial influence and the negative motivations. Like, how about if more political service was akin to jury duty? How about that? How about if there was a process more like jury duty in akin to political service? I like that as an idea, right? Or for that matter, how about if all once you've reached a certain number of signatures on a petition, you have resources at your disposal from the group coffers, so you don't have to be out there raising money to fund your campaign. I would rather pay an extra $10 a month and knowing that that money is going to pay for all of the advertising needs that you have. And best part is, it's no longer whoever has the most money wins, because you're only allowed to have and use the amount of money that you get from those coffers. Otherwise, everything is immediately suspect and you're clearly accepting bribery. I don't even think you should be allowed to self-fund when you're going into public service. I think
What
these...
does coffer mean?
Coffer, you're in your pockets, in your money, in your, I don't know where the word comes from originally, but it means
Yeah, like
in your
what you
war
said there.
chest.
in your war chest, in
Okay.
your bank accounts, in your money pool. Yeah. So again, I think this is the most reasonable way to not burn it all and solve the problem of getting money out of politics. Super easy. Great, easy. Let's do that. Oh, no, they're never going to do that because the people who would have to do that don't benefit from doing that. So once again, I have come to the grips with the fact that it's never going to work. And then a dude like Curtis Yarvin starts singing his song and dance. And I'm like, well, I mean, he's saying the same things.
Why does he have influence?
I mean,
Yeah, well, I have to say, he does have ideas that I agree with.
Yeah.
Like,
That one quote blew my... I couldn't even say the word that was
Yeah.
in the quote. I said
Sure.
the R word. I was so distressed by what it was.
that the soft R, not the hard R.
Yeah, not the like mental disability R. Not,
I
not,
assumed.
Yeah.
but he has, like, I will say objectively, he has a good idea of what, like, the media is, and he has a good idea on, like, what foreign policy is. He does have good ideas. I would consider him a smart individual. I just think that his perception of reality comes from a total rejection of the one of the very core things that we look at the world with, the Enlightenment. If we look at it from that lens, and we look at a democratic system that we have, it shouldn't be wise for any person, for me, to accept at least the political lens of the Enlightenment, that you can at all base a democratic society on it with people like J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel. Now, I will say Peter Thiel, I'm far less worried about, because I do think he is more on the side of, I don't want to be running for office at all. But I do think J.D. Vance, for
I'm
example,
horrified. That makes it worse. I'll let you finish. Sorry, go ahead. I have a lot to say about that, though.
But I think if you look at it from an democratic leader, I don't think J.D. Vance is as far down the pipeline as I would like to believe. But I do think it's just unwise for you to say publicly, like, oh, I'm a fan of Curtis Yarvin. It's like being, oh, I took a lot from Mussolini. It doesn't really follow, and I think it should be avoided at all cost. But you were saying?
You were going to say wrong?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. So, like, with the JD Vance stuff, and like even with this Curtis Yarvin, like, I don't know too much about it, but him specifically, but I could speak a lot more about like JD Vance. And like I see this is something I try to talk about a lot. I see it as quite dangerous. I see Trump's rhetoric headed into JD Vance's rhetoric, headed into the senator of Florida, who now where Andrew Tate was taken to. And so if we keep headed down this line to where Andrew Tate is at, and then inevitably agree that Andrew Tate's rhetoric is not that of something that we should be following, and we head back up that trail that I just suggested there, we land back at Trump and JD Vance and this administration that we're looking at right now. And I'll say more about that, but if there were thoughts on that, I'll let other people jump in on it.
There are.
Weren't there politicians that were saying how they thought Mao did a good job or some shit like that just
And
a few years ago?
that's exactly what I was going
Like-
to say is
like-
both of the rabbit holes suck. That's
Yeah,
but
yeah,
Mhm.
and I agree with it. You don't point to people who did horrific things and go, yeah, they did some good stuff. While you can have that opinion, it's just better not to say it because you just don't.
and
Well, so with what you said, Reddish, both the rabbit holes suck. Like that's what I said earlier. We're here to redefine these things. We're here to, and
Sure.
it's not redefining it. We're interpreting it the way that we saw the definition, and we're saying this is how it should be now. We the people are seeing it this way, and this is how it should go down.
So I'm just gonna put this out there real quick because words are really important. They're kind of my favorite thing. I personally would rather us come up with a whole new word than to try to redefine a word, because trying to change the existing definition of a word is problematic. Just like changing the definition of what Democrats were was problematic. Like, it's the same sort of a thing. I will always be able to refer back to the definition from your, while you are going to refer to your new definition, and that's going to create a communication barrier that makes us
Yeah.
being able to collaborate impossible. If we aren't using the same words for the same meanings, we can't actually meaningfully cooperate. So we have to agree on terms. So let's just make up a new word for the thing you're talking about. All for it. But let's not call it communism, because to Roddy's point, I hear plenty of tankies talk about how Stalin was right. I hear plenty of like, I just can't fucking get behind that. Or Mao. One of my best friends used to have a fucking Mao t-shirt, and every time he wore it, I'm like, bro, like, really?
Or the
I have
Che
questions,
Guevara
yeah.
T-shirt. You're like, yeah, Che.
So again, I'm just saying that we have both directions, like both rabbit holes. We have to be careful about deifying any extremist period.
Mhm.
So, but I agree.
I would like to add to that point that it would also be unwise for us to vilify those, because I feel like one issue we often run
Ooh,
into is
Hot take.
we'll take, like, I'll be honest and be personal about it. I'm probably the most anti-Marxist person, right? Like, in this chat.
You
But
and Roddy might have to arm wrestle for that, homie. But go on.
no,
I'll allow it.
You can have the
I'm
crown.
an
I'll be
anarchist trying to
second.
redefine what Marxism
I-
is. So
But
we
Marx
can all
defined what
have a-
Marxism is. You know what I mean?
I stuttered
anyway,
over
go
it
on.
because I stuttered because I saw Roddy's face get a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah.
No. I was laughing
Good night,
because
Koina.
I know
Yep.
we're both
Appreciate
close,
you as always, man. Have a great
but
weekend.
you can have the crown. I don't mind being backseat. It's okay.
I'll give you the.
Coin
most
is like, fuck, they're going to do
anti-Stalinist.
more of the Capcom shit. I'm out.
No, but to my point, I've read Marx and I found a lot of what he said to be valid, even if it's constructive criticism. Now, I think he's a horseshit writer and political theorist, but I think to that point, we should look at these people with open eyes, and that's how we should run society. And to argue against that, argue my own logic, we should also not, like you said, deify them. We should look at them as people with ideas. I think I took a lot from Curtis Yarvin, and I've taken a lot just as much from the opposite end of Marx or
Okay.
Kropotkin or something like that. It's just about understanding their ideas and then constructing your own with, I think, the more socially acceptable one, which I
But
think
that's the problem. That's where shit falls apart, right? Because you know as well as I do that the average person, and less, again, holler George Carlin, the average person is not capable of differentiating where that cult line ends, right? They're just going to follow blindly because that sounds right, because it resonates, because it sounds like what they think they thought they wanted. So again, you know that people aren't capable of making that distinction all by them lonesome.
I mean, I'm the average person, I would say. I don't think it's more
Do you
about
really believe that, bro?
yeah.
I wish
grew
that
up
was true.
up-
God, I wish that was true, Game Boy.
I-
I'm saying middle person of intellect. I'm saying ability to apply rational thought. How many people are just going to hear a thing and be like, mm-hmm, you know as well as I do.
I think
Watch
there's
the
a difference.
fucking internet.
I feel like there is a difference between being a normal person, being a normal person with a lot of information, and being a normal person who can look at things independent of other things. I would consider myself a normal person who just has a lot of time and resources on my hand before anyone else has before me. But I'm also very susceptible to being dependent on what I've already been taught and what I've already learned growing up to have my position. And I would say that most people are in that category. I think there's a difference between that and just not having enough resources or intelligence. And I think most people right now are often susceptible to these cult like things because, well, if I read Curtis Yarvin and I've never read anyone else, or if I read Karl Marx and I've never read anything else, I'm limited on the scope of my understanding, and therefore I can't rely back on what I already know to. And so I think the issue is we're just not
Once people
providing
start to
counter
believe
rhetoric.
in Taylor Swift, they're going to listen to whatever Taylor Swift says. Those people who are they're called Swifties. No matter what Taylor Swift says, that's what they're going to parrot. So when Taylor Swift says vote yes for this, they're going to say okay. It's no different with Marxists. They say Karl Marx said this, so this. They no longer apply their own critical reasoning and their own critical thought to it. As far as they're concerned, the critical thought has already been applied. Now, yes, I agree. This is why I'm saying you are not the average person, because you won't do that. You're going to look at the thing and say, how do I agree with this? Does that doesn't add up? Oh, but that does. You know what? I'll take parts. The fact that you can parse it like that makes you above average. The average person is just going to swallow it whole and except they'll call it faith in some cases, and in some cases they'll say belief. But it really boils down to the same thing. They're bought in. They're here. They like what you're selling, and they're following you all the way down the rabbit hole. So again, these are the people who listen to Alex Jones, and these are also the people who were at Jonestown. Same folks.
I throw
Well,
the same question.
I'm sorry, it was Jamestown. Jonestown. No, it was Jonestown. Yeah.
Yeah, Jonestown.
Jamestown was the colony.
That's right. Yeah. See, I'm getting history and history. Fuck, bro.
To be fair, Alex Jones has been right before.
To be fair. And a broken clock, how many times a day?
Right, twice a day.
Right.
Twice,
Right.
2 times,
After-
depending
Right.
on your definition of time.
Okay,
If
so
we're on Mars,
so,
I don't know. If we're going by Mars time,
so real quick, let me feed the AI Palantir real quick. I've said this before. Alex Jones gets about 80% of it right. It's
Right.
where it's where he goes with that. Like, he will say, this thing is happening. Yep, you can check it. Yep, that is happening. He says, this thing is happening too. And you can be like, oh yeah, that's totally a thing. And he'll say, this group exists. And you'll be like, yeah, that's really a group. And then he'll be like, and they're making it happen. And you're like, fuck, bro, what are you talking about? Right. So like it's that tying it together thing that he fucks up. And I'm not trying to, but yes, he absolutely
right for all
does.
the wrong reasons.
Exactly. Like he points out true things, just like what we were just fucking talking about. Like Curtis Yarvin accurately says these are the problems, and we're all like, oh yeah, no, he's right, and he's like, this is why I think that problem is happening. You're like, yeah, that sounds like what I thought too. Holy shit! And he's like, now what we need to do is grab a can of gasoline. You know what I mean? It's like, fuck,
Right.
no.
Right.
Anyway.
You lost me, bro. I'm jumping off the train.
Exactly. So.
Yep.
Anyways, all right. Well, so closing thoughts. So, is it safe to assume, first of all, Roddy, I'm going to lead with you. Do you now agree that this is maybe something we should all be fucking paying attention to, and that maybe we don't want them doing? Because again, back in the 90s, we all agreed we didn't want them doing this shit. But now all of a sudden, we're just shrugging our shoulders. Are you still of the shrugging your shoulders, or is this starting to show some daylight between you and Daddy Trump?
Well, it's definitely something to keep an eye on. There's no there's as much daylight between Trump and I, because again, as much as I like to trigger some people, I've never been the biggest Trump fan. I was just forced to defend him in many ways because I don't like people lying about people. I don't like people trying to smear and say things that aren't true. And to be fair, I laughed my ass off many times when he was trolling people. So, yeah, is he perfect? No. Is he a person? Yes. So if I like 80% of the stuff that he says and is doing, it is better than the 10%, hyena was looking to do for me. So
okay. Go ahead and shoot it over there to you, Game Boy. What about you? Do you think that that the Palantir thing is a big concern? Do you think this is something we should probably be like starting to protest about? Do you think we should? I mean, we can't call our Congress people. They're already bending over without reading the fucking article or without reading the bills. So do you? What do you think? Do you think it's worth us being motivated about this, or is this just another shrug?
Well, there's nothing I didn't say in my opening statement that I wouldn't say in my closing one. I think it isn't the bill. I don't think it has ever been the bill. I think it's just a matter of it's this time. I think that we should have been protesting a long time ago, because what has led to this is 100 years of history and maybe 150. I don't think that we should have an overt concern about this as the consequences, because I think the very thing that is going to probably happen to this is just what Snowden warned about, but now with more technology. And I'm not too concerned about like how my life will change, because I don't think any of the information they have right now is going to be added to the list.
Your political stance and your political activism, you do not think will be part of that database?
Oh, I think it already is.
And you aren't worried that it's going to be used against you under any circumstances?
If it hasn't already, it will soon, but it doesn't matter, because they've had enough time with it. I'm just wanting a number.
They've had 100 days. Who's they? Like this administration or the next administration? Like, do you not see that they're dismantling the safeguards right now?
I don't think people I think it's just the same people alternating in the government. I think they still have the same ideals and the same purpose. It's just a new face to it.
Okay. All right. Cheers to that. All right. Now over there to you, Mr. Wrong. What do you say? Do you still agree? I know as an anarcho government, anti-hate 'em all fucking, I'm not sure that you're burn it all, because you don't feel like you said that, but maybe you are. Do you okay. Do you believe that we should be concerned about this Palantir thing? Do you think this is something we should be getting out of our seats about and going out to the streets? Or do you think that this is a shrug, just another phase, just another swirl around the drain?
Absolutely not a phase. I'm glad that you brought it to my attention. I've been curious as to some of the things that were going on into this sort of rhetoric. made a Reddit post about the NYPD using thought crime in AI since the 90s, since the early 90s, to be calculating thought crime. And I was curious to see, based off of with this panel, the mention of the panel, if who the people that we mentioned as well, specifically Peter Thiel, with his pushing of his software, the things that his software does was very specifically related to the things that the NYPD's AI system was doing, and I was curious to see if him and his company had any tie to what and how the influence of what the NYPD was using was anything related to that. And so I think that these sorts of things are quite concerning. I see America as a very large police state, and this is either the Trump administration is either the transition into what is the next wave of modern neo-fascism, Nazism, or the downfall of what is capitalism, which was inevitable because you cannot have a society under what is capitalism where the only goal is always to grow, always to grow, always to be making money, always to be inevitably the top and the best. That cannot be possible. You have to acknowledge the outside of that, the inevitable, that you are going to have downturns, you are going to have a downside, and you don't see that in shareholders and these sorts of like they're expecting businesses to be making money constantly, always, and that rhetoric gets pushed into then a general everyday society. Forever we have to be making, growing, and we see that in this data being collected. The data always has to get collected, always has to be there so we can fight the quote unquote, and this is what I heard about Peter Thiel, to fight terrorism and to care about civil liberties, which is concerning because it's his fucking definition of terrorism, which I've been saying the whole night. Who defines that? We've been talking about that the whole night. Like, well, what does that mean? Like, both of our realities are true. We both define terrorism in our own ways, and the
Chevron, wasn't
definition
it?
of it exists as it does. What?
The Chevron. What wasn't that?
Chevron deference.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
wrote that down
that's who
too. I gotta
who
look into
decides.
that, and so
That's who
right,
interprets it as the answer.
as we learned. And so I'll end that one there and say, look, if people are trying to chill for an after party, if you want to come hang out, play some video games, and be chilling for an after party, I'm gonna stay live. The camera's out. Don't worry, I'll be right back. Give me 1 second,
And
and
for
I'll stay live,
I'll
and
join you.
we can go.
so real quick before
Have
you
our
dip,
own
because
Wi-Fi.
I have a couple of things that I want to you to close on
No,
that,
right,
right?
yeah. My
So
username's in chat. Come check me out.
yeah, chat in so people can click your name. So check it out. This is there. You said something there that you and Roddy actually overlapped. This was one of those horseshoe events that Barbie and Roddy used to have, which was that what you were talking about is basically there should not be the need for constant growth, that the free market trade should actually just happen organically, and that ultimately that comes down to the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve's controls, which one of Roddy's, remember Roddy said that number 20, he thinks that number 1 is down with the Fed. He believes that is the ultimate sin in American history. So I'm just saying that's one of those overlaps where, and this is one of my pet peeves, is all of those places where it overlaps, where both sides of the fence are saying the same fucking thing. Why have we not been able to fix at least that? And that's a good starting place, people. This is where we have to cooperate and collaborate. Let's fix all the shit that we see the overlap, and then maybe, just maybe, we'll start to see some fucking improvement. The other thing, though, was that it was a fucking blast having every single one of y'all in here. So thank you guys very much for joining us, and I will be here.
Thanks for having me.
I will be here every Friday from 8 o'clock till midnight Pacific Standard Time. It's an open panel, so come on in and join us. You just gotta be vetted a little bit by hanging out in the Discord channel. So throw that exclamation point Discord, and yeah, so you guys can join us, and the conversation's always live, and you will find somebody that'll piss you off and say something stupid that you want to disagree with.
He will make you upset. Let's be fair.
No, you're
We
not
know
wrong.
who we're talking about.
He's well. No, there's a few triggers. But Let's Chief was actually supposed to be in the panel tonight, but he couldn't make it. So
that would
yeah,
have been interesting.
no. Again, the thing is, he's a completely different human being in person. So again,
I love Let's Chief. No harm.
Again, so do I, but he's also an absolutely abrasive sumbitch sometimes. So whatever. Anyway, but like I said, he's not the first. He won't be the last. So good night, everybody. I appreciate y'all. We don't have enough people to raid out, so I'm just going to go ahead and call it. So
Have a good one.
you too. Good
If
night,
you
everybody.
wanted to raid into me, yeah, it's fine.
Oh, are you streaming? No, yeah, you're streaming. I'll drop it. I'll drop it.
Yeah,
Fuck
raid
yeah.
into me. Go play some video games. Come chill out for a chat. We'll do an unwind of like what we talked about.
What are we
and,
playing?
Yeah, what are you guys going to be
Yeah,
playing?
I was gonna say I was gonna talk some more about the politics. I thought I assumed you were gonna go kind of chill out and.
No, I just got to work in the
amped on
morning.
Politics.
Yeah, no, I got to work in the morning. But so
gotcha.
y'all can keep on going for sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm gonna continue this conversation. You turned me on to the Palentir technology shit, and I got a bunch to say about it, and I want to continue this conversation.
For sure. And you know what? You know what? What I actually would love is for y'all to watch that video I linked and watch it together and fucking make yourself some React content, because I
want to do that.
Say what? What was that, Game Boy?
What video did you link?
Oh, you're about to watch it, homie.
I can link it again. Right into me. I'll link it again for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night.